Hello there. Might be wondering why we have Higurashi cut by Chapter 8 here, and that would be because I realized I was missing a single achievement, and it's a hidden chapter for doing the fragments all perfectly, besides this one, after beating the game. So I had to redo all these again. I did that really quick last Saturday. And we have this. Flags from Kids' Meals. She needs to be rescued too. I'm going to play outside. A girl's cheerful voice echoed in the house. It was a tenement house, so walls were thin. So of course, her yell carried through to the neighbors, but since it was a child's voice, nobody complained. Miyoko, we're thinking about going to the mall. Her father's voice didn't reach the girl, because all she was thinking about was making a new secret base with her friends in the field. Her father knew the girl had been looking forward to going to the mall, and that if they went without her, she would be upset. He also knew that the girl liked collecting flags from the kids' meals at the restaurant there, and one more would bring her collection to 20 flags. The girl was making a wish on those flags. Just a second. I had the other game in the background and it was annoying me. It was just the cicadas. The girl was making a wish on those flags. She believed if she collected 20 of them, she could become happy. Oh well. He supposed he'd bring a flag home as a souvenir. It wouldn't be a big deal. If he asked a waitress, she'd bring one for him. On that day, due to an accident, the trains were running behind schedule. To make up the time lost, drivers were braking a little too late and accelerating a bit too soon. It was rather unsafe. The Tanashi family didn't own a car. They always used a train to go to the mall. As the girl skipped her way to her friend's house, an unfamiliar woman stopped her. Obviously, she wasn't from around there. The ties between the neighbors were very tight around there. The girl knew everyone's face, so if there was a stranger, it was either a new mailman or someone who's lost. The woman said to the girl, "Do you want to live, or do you want to die?" Any person would think the woman was crazy asking something like that, but the girl was too innocent to think that way. She answered immediately, "I want to live." "Okay, then go. Your friend isn't home, but go on." "She isn't home?" The girl couldn't figure out why this woman would know that. As the woman left, the girl stopped her. She was curious, although it was a little scary, as to what response she'd get if she answered differently. Be right back, I forgot to close the door. We're back. "If I want to die, then what?" "You'll get another flag from a kid's meal." "Eh? Hey, that's not fair. They're going without me. That's not fair." The girl turned and tried to run back home. "Are you sure? You won't regret it?" The mysterious woman tried to confirm this. "Why would I regret it?" "I won't tell you. I'm mean." The girl thought this was some kind of a riddle, so she pondered it for a while, but she couldn't figure it out. Then she clapped her hands as if she came to a conclusion. "That's okay then." "Why is it okay?" "Because my parents will be with me." The woman stepped aside. The girl bowed to her and ran home. She saw her parents locking the door to leave. The girl jumped on them and nagged them that she wanted to go too. The girl was going to the mall with her family. The family headed to the train station, waited for a train to arrive, and got on it. The driver was feeling the pressure to make up for the delay, and the passengers could tell that from the way he was driving. The girl noticed the unusual swaying of the train. She stood on her knees and looked out the window. Her mother told her to sit down, because it was dangerous. The girl stuck her tongue out. Then the train reached a very big and very sharp curve. The train tilted in that direction, and all the people were shoved to the side. They were all squished together and grumbled about it. Then the train continued, too. Hmm? The girl and her parents came home under the night sky full of stars, with shopping bags in their hands. They unlocked the door, turned the lights on, and then the girl put her bags by the front door and ran into her room. She opened her desk drawer, took something out of her pocket, and put it in. She closed the drawer once, but opened it again, then spread her treasure on the tatami floor. They were the flags of many different countries that came with the kids' meals. The Japanese flag, the American flag, the English flag. Which country was this for? The one with 3 colors. Many of them. She lined them up as she counted. She counted out loud. Then she danced around happily, for she now had 20 of them. It took her so long to collect that many. It was hard work for this girl, who was so proud of herself for reaching her goal. She worked so hard that there must be something good waiting for her. She made a wish to become happy if she collected 20 of them. Therefore, something wonderful must be waiting to happen. The girl waited excitedly, but soon realized it wasn't a magic lamp, so no genie would be jumping out. Maybe it wouldn't happen that night. Maybe it'd be tomorrow. Maybe it'd be earlier that day. The girl decided to wait patiently. She accomplished something as great as collecting 20 flags. Surely some wonderful happiness awaited. Surely some wonderful miracle awaited. Or perhaps it might be like a charm, keeping sad misfortunes at bay. Of course. The girl put her 20 flags back in the drawer. As she heard her mother tell her to brush her teeth and go to bed, she ran to the bathroom. This is fine, isn't it? It's okay to get a miracle in advance. What should I do next? There's plenty of fragments to play with. What? You want to try too? It's fun. Makes you feel like God. A world with Sachi or a world where the Sonozaki sisters didn't switch. I wonder what a world with Satoko's parents and Rika's parents alive and well would be like. Oh, how about this? Akasaka gets enticed to the enemy's side by Takano. That sounds interesting. Personally, I'm curious about a world where Takano is madly in love with Tomitake. It'll be fun to match Keiichi with different girls, too. I love drama very, very much. Let's see, what should I do next? I have so many fragments. Hey, do you want some? What kind of world are you going to make? Oh. The world of Higurashi When They Cry will move on even without us. There are many dreams, possibilities, and miracles in that world. There are innumerable fragments all interweaved with one another. I've shown you a small number of those fragments, but it's up to you to play with the rest of them. The world of Higurashi When They Cry is now in your hands. It's a big, wide world full of fragments, and they are yours to manipulate. Your dreams, possibilities, and your miracles are yours to discover. I thank you for joining me on this 4.5-year tale about this world. I thank all those who supported me during this 4.5-year tale about this world. I thank all the characters who brought this 4.5-year tale about this world to life. I thank my family who have given their understanding for this world, co-workers who spared no effort for it, my friends who supported me during creation, while I'm the same person who created this work. I thank this work itself for the unforgettable 4.5 years it's given me. I think the fact that I've left behind a legacy of the 4.5 work. I thank the fact. I thank all those people who sent me emails teaching me the joys of production. And if I may leave you with one more piece, I leave the joy of making a product of your own. I have nothing to show for the 4.5 years I've spent in college. I simply spent my days without achieving anything. I have no proof that I was even alive during that time. If you feel that the regret for this was what drove me to make this work, then I think we can meet again as friends. That is why I leave you this message. I look forward to the day we meet, my friend. Dang, he hits me right where it hurts. I didn't do much extra activities in college. Maybe one thing. I remember that thing fondly, but even then, it was very minor. So now we wait for the music to end. I think that'll be it, right? Yep. Right. Let's get out of here. A little flag on the achievement. I'm going to open the other one after I uninstall this. Goodbye. And add it to my hidden spot. Now we open the other game. Ray. Close that. Now get ready to open the new volume thing so that you can hear it too. Higurashi When They Cry Ray is now open, so you'll be able to hear the volumes. Hopefully. Right? There it is. I'll wait for the game to open up so you can see this beautiful title screen in a few seconds. Good old ham fists. I already did my config, so we're all set to start. Oh, I gotta change my we actually have 3 scenarios. Anyway, give me a few seconds, I just need to change my category. This is Ray, let's see if I can just type that. No, I can't. Higurashi Ray, will that give me what I want? I believe so, yes. Here we go. Done. So we have 3 things. Tale of Rika reaching the summer of 1983. Choose one of many worlds, but is this the world truly the best one for her? Malicious. Ooh. This is a tale of peculiar dispute over the precious jewels, the Magatama of Fuarazu. Jewels capable of granting mutual love that befalls the club members. People who haven't played Daybreak can enjoy this too? What the heck is Higurashi Daybreak? And after that, within these pages is a Bible of blazing passion for today's modern, apathetic youths. Even though it was meant as an after-party for Mayakashi Hen, it completely ruins the impact of that chapter. Deemed too dangerous for consumption, this legendary scenario was sealed away. Continue only if you can vow that you are truly degenerate. That's an easy one. Anyway, I guess it's not good feels. Hey, give me a few seconds. I just want to look up Higurashi Daybreak. Daybreak. 2-on-2 versus third-person shooter. Okay then. We did not play that, and we will not play that. Oh, for other pairings. Whoops. Well, guess we start with the worst option, wherever that is. Bread rained down from the heavens. Some lamented that it was not meat. Meat rained down from the heavens. Some lamented that they preferred bread. God descended down from the heavens. Until I know what will make all happy, water shall rain down. Frederica Bernkastel. This is a work of fiction. Never forget that. The cicada's chorus has been growing increasingly lively. The strange weather during that never-ending June had been hot enough to make us feel like summer had come early. But even so, it was still only June. Once we got closer to summer in July, the season graced us with even more summery weather. Today, to fulfill my dream, we all went to play at the swimming pool. The dream might have seemed humble at first, but I didn't have to look back on the 100 years journey it took to achieve it anymore. Still, I decided I shouldn't forget about it. I feel like the text is a bit different. For many people, this was a perfectly ordinary day, but for me, it had taken so many years of wandering just to get here that it made me feel faint. And remembering it made this seemingly average, regular life fill me with such profound happiness. Wow, not bringing a camera today must be Mion Sonozaki's greatest failure. How? I don't need a camera. I've burned this into my memory already. When I close my eyelids, I can still see how cute Keiichi looks. Oh. Yeah. Don't look at them. Don't. I'll fire your eyelids off your face. That's what you get for forgetting to bring your swimsuit to the pool. And the whole ruckus about you putting on those shady swim trunks too. From beginning to end. You reap what you sow. Ha ha ha, yeah. Sewing is so good. Ribbing. Oh no! Keiichi, you should thank me. If she hadn't brought those swan underpants, Your swan would have been swinging all over. Nipa! Boy, was that a joy to behold. I didn't plan anything specific for today, and just when I was thinking we'd play some nice, quiet pool games. Well, with this group, it would be stranger if something didn't happen. No, that's definitely wrong. If you hadn't planned anything, you wouldn't have bothered to bring those embarrassing swan underpants here in the first place. You were scheming, looking for some excuse to get me to wear them. I'm sure of it. Cat's being a booger already. Give me a few seconds. Alright, the cat has been removed. So is something else off my desk. You back up. And there. Alright, where am I? But today was really fun, so I'm totally satisfied. I am. Back in. It certainly was fun. On that point, I quite agree. Satsuko smiled at me, looking for my agreement. So I sent her back just as brilliant a smile, expressing just how much fun all the romping about today had been. As we all reminisced on our romp at the pool today, we got on our bikes and started on our way home. Hinamizawa didn't have any pools, so we'd gone to a public pool in Okonomiya. There was an elevation difference between the two communities, and while going downhill had been very pleasant, we had a long trip upward on our way back. Speaking of Chapter 8 a bit more, that epilogue is actually shown in the anime, but it's a bit weird. So first, it looks like an adult Rika, so I assume it's the Fragments person. And then also there's, they didn't really show what happens afterwards, so I always thought that Takano just dies there. So it's good they show the further epilogue now. For Hinamizawa children at the zenith of their energy, it wasn't much of a chore, but we naturally fell silent as we quietly pedaled up the hill. Seeing everyone so silent made me want to screw things up somehow. Messing with Satsuko at times like these was so much fun for me that you could call it the very purpose of my existence. I pedaled harder, caught up to Satsuko's bicycle as she pedaled in silence, and gave her a nudge in the shoulder. Rika! Me! After pretending to be mean to Satsuko, I sped up. Of course, she sped up too and chased after me. Satsuko struggled to somehow nudge me back, but I was no slouch either. Our speeds naturally increased, and we began to quickly pass the others in the group. What's this, a race? This old man won't lose either. You shouldn't fool around on the road. It's dangerous, Rika-chan, Satsuko-chan. This was a public road, and cars sometimes came and went. But we'd lived here a long time, so we knew not many cars came around at this hour. Rika! A car is coming! Me! I won't fall for that trick. So when Satsuko said that, I thought she was just trying to distract me. Oh geez. A car horn. When I heard it, I realized Satsuko's warning wasn't a trick. But it was so sudden that I was overtaken with surprise. When I looked in front of me, the car was right there. I panicked and violently slugged my handlebars. The motion was more than aggressive and sudden enough to throw me off balance. As my body lurched forward, I realized I was flying through the air. My nose caught the whiff of asphalt, telling me I was a moment away from being hurt. Rika! I heard Satsuko shriek. No, the sensation I was experiencing was so unreal that I only could say I thought I heard her. I couldn't even figure out if the sight of the car coming towards me as I hurtled through the air was real. But that absence of reality probably only lasted about 1 second. I wasn't even given the time to say oops. Jeez. I heard the cries of Higurashi in the distance. In those cries dwelt such cool tenderness that I wanted to listen forever. Eventually, the silence was broken. The sound of many footsteps approached, pulling my mind back to reality. Suddenly, the cries of the Higurashi were gone. The cries filling the room were that of cicadas. I thought I had been hearing the Higurashi this whole time. Was that a dream? I was in a bed. I didn't recognize the ceiling. Where was I? The room was small, with an office desk and shelves full of medicine. I recognized the smell of that medicine, and the voices of children mixing with the cicadas' cries. I knew right away. The school? Yeah. I was in bed at the nurse's office. The door opened and Chie appeared. What happened? Behind her was Satoko and... Huh? My mind went blank. It was the face of someone who couldn't have been there. Oh, the joke. Sachi, are you alright, Furude-san? Ah, thank goodness. I was really worried. The doctor should be here soon. Please, stay in bed until then. Yep, thank goodness. I really was worried. My mind was still blank. Dazed, I kept staring at his face as he spoke words of concern. This person could not possibly be at school in 1983. Sachi, are you okay? You still don't look very good. Stay in bed until the doctor gets here. That aside, Satoko Hojo-san, where are you hiding? Chie raised her voice and turned back towards the hallway before Satoko poked her face out, looking as though she was sulking. I didn't throw it that hard. Furude-san is just exaggerating. Furude-san? That means we're probably back in 81 or something. Maybe 82. That isn't how you apologize. Say sorry to Furude-san. I sensed something a little strange about Satoko's tone and mood. In any case, judging by the situation, Satoko had done something to me, and as a result, I'd been carried to the nurse's office. That's how it looked to me. But didn't I pass out after falling off my bike on the way home from Okonomiya with everyone? Come here, Satoko-san. Chie called Satoko in a firm voice. Chie called Satoko Satoko-san before Sachi went missing. The only time there were two people named Hojo was when Satoko and Sachi were both here together. In other words, before June 1982. Then, was this past? Was I repeating everything again? I felt a chill start to crawl through me. I'd gone through all that hardship to get past June of 1983, and now the world had rewound to the past again. The dead end of June 1983 that I challenged for over 100 years, and finally broke through. Would I have to defeat it again? I certainly learned many things and defeated my fate with certain willpower, but I was also saved by a law of luck. There was no proof I could challenge June 1983 and defeat it like I did last time, which meant I was, probably, hit by that car in the bike accident and killed. And, just before dying, I had rejected death and rewound the world. The way that unrealistic memory cutoff was definitely similar to when I rewound the world previously. Then would I have to undertake a terribly long journey again? That can't be. The idea was infinitely terrifying. As it dawned upon me, I felt as though my vision was growing distant. I still hadn't fully understood just how terrifying this was just yet. Come, Satoko. You need to apologize. Furude-san, I'm sorry for throwing the ball at you, but you were just standing there and being in the way. Satoko's apology was strange. It wasn't even an apology, really. It literally sounded like an excuse. She looked at Chie and Sachi, wondering if that was enough. It didn't seem like Satoko had any intention of apologizing for throwing the ball at me. Because Satoko wasn't even looking at me. Not really. I wasn't. It was like I didn't belong in her world. She'd never treated me this coldly before. Really? And before anything else, she's talking strangely. It didn't seem like the situation that had befallen me was a rewind so far in the past that Sachi was still around. Something else had happened. Something bizarre that I didn't understand. That's how I felt as I listened to the odd way Satsuko was talking. She sounded far more normal than the Satsuko I knew. Satsuko made a face, like reading out a standard written apology was enough, then ran off into the hallway. I checked the clock. It was right in the middle of afternoon break. She was probably rushing back to the schoolyard because she didn't want to miss any more playtime. As she turned her back on me and ran away, I suddenly felt very cold and sad. If the Satsuko I knew had hurt me enough to put me in the nurse's office, she would have stayed with me the entire time. Her footsteps vanished before she'd even look at me once. It didn't seem like she hated me. It felt like she wasn't even interested. What was happening? What year and what month was it right now, anyway? Hanyu was nowhere to be found. Despite wanting to know, no calendar or anything like one was nearby, so it didn't seem like I could find out right now. Most normal people would give you a strange look if you asked what the year and month were, and I had learned from my long journey that I had to be careful about that. Instead, I decided to push that question aside for the moment. Sorry, Rika-chan. I'll make sure to talk to Satsuko later. I'm sure she asked you to play with her because you seemed lonely. Me. Thanks. I'm not worried about it anymore, so it's okay. As Satsuko's older brother, Sachi apologized in her stead. He seemed no different from the Sachi I knew. Alright, I'm going to get going then. Thank you, Sachi. Anytime. Sachi gave a little wave of his hand, turned, and left the nurse's office. So this is just like at the end of chapter 8, where it was like a world where Sachi is still here, and the parents are still alive and whatnot, maybe. A new set of footsteps approached in his place. From their pace and sound, it wasn't a child, so it's eerie. It was probably Coach. Chie had called for him. Ah, Doctor. I'm sorry to call you out so suddenly. She just woke up a few minutes ago. Is that right? That's good, that's good. It was a throaty voice. It wasn't Irie? The man who suddenly appeared was one I'd never seen in the clinic, or even at the Irie Institute. He was a large man with round curves, the exact opposite of Irie. The stubble on his face made him seem rugged. He was so distinct that I wouldn't forget him even if I'd only met him once. And yet I had no recollection of him. But he was wearing a white robe, and Chie had called him the doctor from the clinic. So he must have been a doctor from the Irie clinic. But I'd never met him before. Hey, Eureka-chan. You sure went through a lot. Did the ball hit you in the back of the head? Would you mind if I took a look? Me... Without waiting for an answer, the mountaineerish doctor felt around the back of my head. His fingers were uncultured, completely different from Irie's delicate hands. Could you show me your eyes? Yep, you seem alright. Do you have a headache or anything? Any nausea or dizziness? No. I think you're probably fine then. Just to be sure, we'll take you to the clinic and look at your brain waves. Still, as far as I can see, there's no problem at all. Gah! The doctor laughed uproariously, spraying spittle everywhere. Chie gave a look of relief too, as if that was a sign there were no problems. I see. Then, just to be safe, I'll leave her in your care. Furude-san, please go with the doctor to the clinic. Indeed. You'll be in and out before afternoon hours begin. Let's go! The big doctor, acting too familiar for my tastes, pushed me out the door, and before I could fight my feeling of wrongness, I was taken out of the nurse's office. What was this world? Sometimes the dice came up with strange numbers and caused little differences. 3.14 blah 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 blah. I don't remember anything beyond that. But this was the first world that felt this wrong to me. Did the dice rolls turn up something rare? After repeating this world for over 100 years, I thought I had figured out pretty much every event, yet this all felt so strange to me. There was something immeasurable about how strange it was, and I couldn't help but feel intensely anxious. I put my shoes on at the entrance before being taken to a parked car in front of the school gate. Well, this world is definitely going to be weird because if Rika and Satsuko aren't friends and Sachi is still here, That means there's a good chance that Satsuko's parents are still alive and whatnot. All the while, I stared at the big man's back as he walked, racking my brains trying to remember him, but I couldn't come up with anything. No matter how much I thought back, I couldn't recall any man like this in the Mountain Dogs, much less the Area Institute. If Sachi was here, that meant it had to be before June 1982. Hanyu would always be there as soon as I woke up, and she'd tell me what was going on in that world. But in this world, I haven't seen Hanyu even once. The radiant sunlight, the annoying cicada cries, the lively voices of my classmates. I knew them all so well. But something was different. It almost made me sick. Hanyu, where am I? What kind of world is this? Hanyu didn't answer me. Fine then. If I went home and opened a bottle of wine, she'd be sure to come rushing in. Not once had she ever allowed me a few elegant minutes to myself. Michan, take this! Ha! Too slow. The most important rule of dodgeball is to go for the weaklings. Aiming for me was a tactical mistake. And the next slowest one is you. Yeah! Ow. I saw several classmates playing a game of dodgeball. Mion and Rena were there in the crowd. Rena? Any world where Rena was present was later than April 1982. And Sachi disappeared from the village in June 1982. The only time Rena and Sachi could be here at the same time was the short span from April to June of 1982. It didn't seem like I'd gone as far into the past as I'd feared. But I still had to repeat the June of 1983. That hadn't changed. Did I have to complete those long, difficult days of nothing but strife yet again? Teaming up with my friends, trusting each other, grappling with our suspicions of each other, believing in miracles, and fighting alongside everyone. And all the coincidences in the world to help save us. If we missed any one of those elements of the process, this world would end up in horrific tragedy. I'd gotten past this dead end before. This was the second time, so I understood a little of how to fight against Takano's group. So I probably wouldn't have to spend another whole 100 years. Even still, it would definitely take several of those years, if not dozens. But I never wanted to spend another day in that June of 1983 ever again. The despair I felt at reaching the goal once, then getting kicked back to the start. I got into the man's car, and as it bumped over the rough roads, I sorted out the situation I was in. That day in July 1983. I went to have a good time at the pool with everyone, and on the way home, there was an accident, and I died. Cross out. Probably am in the hospital dreaming. And right before dying, I used the power I never thought I'd have to use again to turn back time once more. The power that wouldn't allow me to go a few weeks back, never mind a whole year. This world was probably in June of 1982. It was considerably hot, so the Watanagashi festival couldn't be far off. That meant the countdown to Sachi's disappearance had already begun. Earlier in the nurse's office, he'd given me kind and considerate words, but an unyielding darkness would have been starting to take control of his heart, his fear of his inescapable terminal illness's footsteps. I thought back to how the Hojo siblings had looked in the office, and to Satsuko and Sachi's everyday sibling relationship. It would cease to be an everyday thing in just another few days or weeks. Satsuko's somewhat cold treatment of me had hurt, but when I remembered that, I felt pity for her. Satsuko, for now, at least, treasure that time. Your relationship with Sachi is limited. That cruel fact hadn't been overruled a single time in any of these 100 years of worlds. I never tried to. In other words, it was inevitable that I would give up instantly. I could only sympathize with the fate awaiting Satsuko now, because I never try. Eventually, the area clinic came into view. Every time I saw it, I was struck by its magnificence. It was almost too much for Hinamizawa. But this time, the clinic building felt a little dull, as though affected by the sadness coloring my heart. The car came to a stop in the employee parking lot near the back entrance. Can you walk? Are you feeling well? Me. I'm perfectly fine. I don't think I need a brain scan. Head injuries are scary because some take a while to do anything. We'll play it safe and get you scanned. If it's nothing, you can go back for afternoon class. This was the first time I'd met this strange doctor, but he didn't seem unreliable. Maybe the cloudiness in my inspection made me look like I was worried my injury was serious, and that was why he tried to cheer me up. His attempt at encouragement was off base, but for now I told myself that he wasn't a bad person, at least. The air inside the clinic smelled unfamiliar to me. Inside, it was the same clinic as the one I knew. But something was different. On the whole, it felt old, like I'd find cobwebs if I looked. And I recognized none of the nurses we passed. Wait. An old man, a bit boorish, not delicate hands. Could this be Takano? Like, grandfather Takano. He somehow survived, and he became the clinic owner. Just a weird thought. The only people I knew were some elderly villagers chatting as they watched TV in the waiting room. Oh, is that you, Rika-chan? What happened? Do you have a cold? Someone during recess threw a ball and it hit the back of her head. Figured we should do a scan to make sure. Head injuries can be scary. But you're young, so I'm sure 1 or 2 balls to the head is nothing. The old people laughed aloud, as though rubbing some spit on the bump would fix it. Something about their behavior was strange, too. The people I knew would get out their beads, start praying, and making a big fuss just because I got a bump on the head. Oh. Maybe they'd say 1 or 2 balls is fine because you're young, if I were a normal child. But for me in particular, in Hinamizawa, that was impossible. This all seemed very wrong. Something huge, something I couldn't ignore, was different about this world. Rika-chan, come in. After the large man went straight into the examination room, he called me in. The queen carrier had come for an examination, and the next logical step was that Irie, the director, would appear, but he hadn't appeared yet. The discomfort I'd been feeling this whole time got even stronger, and then I spotted something odd. It was a notice from the hospital, hung in the waiting room. Please be sure to bring your insurance card on your first checkup of the month. Takano Clinic. I called it. Nice. Huh? Takano Clinic. I looked around at the other notices hung about the waiting room. All of them had Takano Clinic written at the end. Not a single one said Irie Clinic. Where am I? Rika-chan, come on in. We're burning daylight. I heard the man's deep voice from the examination room again. I ignored him and burst out the front entrance. Why? Because I wanted to know. To know the name of this clinic. Oh look, there it is. Right there. Takano Kliniku. It looked exactly like the Irie clinic I knew. But there it was. They answered why everything felt so out of place. Where is this? I could feel the strength drained from my body. So that means this Takano must have gotten his thing how many years ago? Probably around 15 or so years ago. Hence the building looking so old. I could feel the strength drained from my body. My legs gave out, and I sat, and for a while, I stared dumbly up at the name that was inexplicably different. I'm not sure how long I stayed like that. Eventually, the big doctor from before and a nurse came running out. They asked me if I suddenly felt sick, and if I didn't answer, they would annoyingly get even more concerned. So, somewhat offhandedly, I lied that I felt a little dizzy for a moment. But they must have thought the vertigo pointed to a symptom of something. They picked me up and brought me into the clinic examination room, hooked me up to an EEG terminal, and told me to rest. It's really nothing. I thought this would be annoying, so I tried to run away. Then I tripped and fell. It's the doctor's job to decide if it's nothing. Please lay down until I say it's okay. Understand? I felt like the more I tried to say, the more complicated things would get. So for now, I just decided to play along so I could get out of there. Doctor, is there a doctor named Erie here? What? Who did you say? Erie. Erie? Is that your family doctor, Rika-chan? What hospital does he work at? We're getting nowhere. Is Erie not in this world? Of course he's in this world, he's just not in Hinamizawa right now. Compared to everything the other adults like Aksaka and Kasai did during the long battle of June 19th, Erie's presence might have seemed to matter little, but it was extremely important that he was around. Without his determination to sever the chain of sadness created by Hinamizawa syndrome, there was essentially no way for Hinamizawa to break free of its 1,000-year curse. Yeah, this guy working on it for 20 plus years, he's useless. And Irie wasn't here. Plus, Irie was my only ally who knew I was the Queen Carrier. That ally was gone. Instead, we have an ally that's even more veteran. The strange way Satsuko was talking, the absence of my only ally from Tokyo, Irie. No doubt some unpleasant die had landed on one. Then, despite my ally Irie not being here, was Takano still behind everything? When you get one bad roll, you get a bunch more. Dr. Takano passed away quite a while ago. The name comes from that splendid doctor who built such a wonderful clinic in this village. Oh! Someone I never had the chance to meet, but a splendid doctor if there ever was one, I hear. Splendid doctor? Would the occult-obsessed Takano ever be praised as a splendid doctor? And she passed away a while ago? When I looked around the examination room, I found a picture of some old people hanging in a frame. On it was written, Founder and First Director, Hifumi Takano. There it is. Hifumi Takano? Wasn't that the man Takano looks up to, who she called her grandfather? He was the first one to discover the Hinamizawa syndrome, but nobody accepted his theories about it, and he passed away in despair. Takano had understood his chagrin, and eventually made a big decision, then began to build a future so stable you could call it fate. That Takano? Another person named Takano? Not the founder? I can't say I know them. None of the nurses are named that anyway. Maybe it was an old nurse who retired before I got here. I don't think so. She's a young woman. There's nobody here by that name. If there was a nurse like that, I definitely want her to work here. The man guffawed with delight. He certainly didn't look like he was lying. He was speaking the truth. Then, even Takano is gone? Erie was absent. Takano was absent. The Erie Institute didn't have its director or vice director. What did that all mean? Who was the director then? Oh, and what about the mountain dogs? The Erie Institute was, at its heart, a research institution. Without them acting as its hands and feet, it couldn't exist. Is there a landscaping company here called Okunogi Gardeners? Landscapers? Couldn't tell ya. Never had to call one of them myself. Wouldn't really know. Where are they from? I thought they had an office in Okunomiya. Why not look them up in a phone book later? Individual people sometimes don't show up in them, but I think most companies should be in there. Could the Erie Institute not exist in this world? Would that mean this world didn't have a dead end? At all? I mean, you still have the Hinamizawa syndrome. I couldn't figure anything out. Which dice were showing 1, and which were showing 6? Or was the stranger part the dots on the dice themselves? The game board I was a piece on now, and the game board I knew. Were they different? Let's be a little more optimistic. Was it possible that Tokyo hadn't chosen Erie, but this man instead? Then would this man know I was the Queen Carrier? If he did, then a number of things would fall into place. The prudence of giving me a brain scan after just getting knocked over by a ball to the head. Wasn't that because he knew I was special? That I was the Queen Carrier? Then was this man playing the role of Erie in this world? I looked at the name tag on the robe he put on after coming into the room and read the name. Yamamoto? Yes? It was a natural response. It seemed the name Yamamoto wasn't a problem. Was this Yamamoto person the director of the Erie Institute? Or rather, the Yamamoto Institute? It was also possible they'd crowned this clinic with the Takano name in commemoration of him succeeding Hifumi Takano's research. Yamamoto, do you know what the Hinamizawa syndrome is? The Hinamizawa what? Do you know about me being the queen carrier, or anything? Queen? Wahahaha! Rika-chan, you seem to me like you're still a princess. Do you want to be a queen when you grow up? Hahaha, you dream big. Okay, there we go. You can take it off now. I learned from just that short exchange that Yamamoto had nothing to do with the Hinamizawa syndrome. There were a few people unconnected to Tokyo in the Erie Institute too, but there were only a small handful of nurses and office workers. And besides, the queen carrier was currently in the clinic. Anyone connected to the Hinamizawa syndrome would have come rushing to me. Yamamoto had rushed to me, but he didn't know I was the queen carrier. What did that mean? I listened hard to try and catch the sound of Erie's indiscreet laughter, but all I heard was the TV in the waiting room and the motor of the goldfish aquarium. That maid-obsessed man with his ulterior motives during checkups was nowhere to be seen in the examination room. It was simply uncomfortable, and the smells, dust, and medicine made me feel unpleasant. Now I knew. This really wasn't the clinic I knew. It wasn't just a strange feeling anymore. It was a clear fact now. Yamato left for a moment. Yamato? It should be Yamamoto. Then came back and told me there was nothing wrong with my readings. If you feel alright, you can go back to school now. Afternoon class will start soon, so I can take you there if you need a ride. Can you go to school yourself? Me isn't a yes or no. Which'll it be? Yes. I'm fine. I can go back to school myself. I see. Then get going. I'll call Chie-sensei and tell you you're coming back. Oh! When I saw Yamamoto pick up the phone on the table, I spotted a tabletop calendar next to it. June Showa 58. I don't know that. Showa 58. What was that in AD again? The Pacific War ended in Showa 20, which was 1945. 58 minus 20. So that means 38 after that. So that's 83 again. Yes, 30, 58. And if you add 38 to 45, it's 83. It's 1983? June? Wasn't that the same period of time I had just been living in? But, huh? That's impossible. In 1983, Satoshi's here? And Iri isn't here. Takano isn't here. Satoko is acting strangely. And even Hanyu is gone. Where am I? Hanyu, I know you're wasting time somewhere. Get over here with your ow-ows and tell me what kind of world this is. I walked through downtown on my way back to school. All the storefronts were familiar. Nothing had changed. But for some reason, there were less people and more stores with their shutters closed. Maybe because of the dam project? This apparent state of decline reminded me of New Year's or New Year's Eve. It was a strange sight during the season when you could hear cicadas crying. I barely passed anyone. Even when old people walked by, they didn't talk to me. Normally, if I met an old person in the middle of the day like this, they'd ask if I had a cold and was staying home from school, or they'd start rubbing their prayer beads and saying weird things. There was none of that. Just like the old people in the clinic, they reacted with disinterest. I wasn't in the mood for it anyway, so I was thankful they didn't do any of that. But there was already a heap of oddities before me. I couldn't help but feel like it was growing even bigger. Afternoon break was long over by the time I got back to school, and it was now time for afternoon classes. I went through the entrance and changed into my slippers. And then I noticed another strange thing. Keiichi? A lot of empty shoe cubbies. Yep. Empty was different from absent. Anyone enrolled would leave their either slippers or regular footwear in their locker, no matter what. If neither were present, that meant they weren't in this class to begin with. Sometimes people took their slippers home to wash during the weekends, but any lockers being empty during the day was unthinkable. I counted, a little over 10 pairs of shoes. So that's the usual gang switching Sachi in for Keiichi. Already gives you like 5. That was only half of how many people were in the school I knew. Everything was so messed up. I had no idea what was going on. I steeled myself and opened the classroom door. Everyone turned around to look at me. There truly were only half of the familiar classmates there. And they weren't absent, because only half as many seats were actually in the classroom. Furude-san, please take your seat. All right, everyone. This is class time, so focus on your drills. Chie clapped her hands, and everyone looked back down at their desks and workbooks, ignoring me altogether. My seat. Sachi was sitting at the desk next to Satsuko's. That didn't seem to be my seat. Then where was it? Soon, I found an open seat, looking small and quiet, in the back near the window. I could tell from the pattern of the floor cushion with my disaster hood in it. That seemed to be Rika Furude's seat in this world. It was in the corner, as though the classroom had forgotten about it. There were no seats next to it, and nobody would see it when looking at the blackboard. In a place where I wouldn't block anyone's view, whether or not I wasn't here. That seat was almost symbolic of how I'd been feeling ever since I awoke. I sat down and took out my workbook. Then, pretending to study, I looked around the classroom. Mion Sonozaki was here. She didn't seem very different. Ren Ryugu was here too. The way she was helping the child in the next seat over with his work was very like her. Satsuko and Sachi were studying together as friendly siblings. Sachi, being the older brother, was teaching her things, but Satsuko looked disgruntled, and his words went in one ear and out the other. To me, it was almost like she didn't hate studying, she just didn't like their roles being reversed, since she looked after him at home, and it made me smile a little. I still felt a tiny pain in my chest from Satsuko's cold treatment of me in the nurse's office, but as far as I could tell by looking at her individually, she seemed totally normal. But I still couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong there. When Satsuko was with Sachi, she was often gloomy because of problems at home, or their aunt's abuse, so they were acting like normal siblings, and though I knew it was rude to Satsuko, that felt wrong. But if Satsuko had a normal life, that was fine. The bigger shock, though, was the absence of the most important person in our group of friends. I looked around the room several times for him, but he wasn't here. Keiichi Maibaro wasn't here. Of course, because if they're closing down the school, I made multiple excuses, like I wasn't seeing right, or he happened to be absent today. Because of the dam, then that means less people or no people would be moving there, but Rena did for some reason. But even the list of students on cleaning duty hanging on the wall didn't have Keiichi's name on it. Everyone in the class would have had their names on there, but Keiichi's wasn't. Keiichi Maibara did not exist in this classroom, even though it was June of 1983 in this world. I see. On rare occasions, there would be a world where Keiichi hadn't moved here. It wasn't the first time, but it was a sad thing. Keiichi was an important key to crushing the fate of June 1983. If he wasn't on the game board, then this game was predetermined to be a loss. But was this even a game at all? No Irie, no Takano, no signs of the Institute from Tokyo researching Hinamizawa syndrome. If none of them were here, didn't that mean there was nobody at all to fight? If I didn't need to fight, then, in a sense, Keiichi's absence wasn't an issue. Actually, in this case, June 1983 wasn't fated to be a dead end, and, in other words, in this world, 1,000 dice all turned up ones, and that changed that absolute fate Takano had constructed with her certain willpower into something else. I had no idea what was what. Could this world even be explained by what dots came up on the dice? Where am I? Someone, tell me. Obviously unable to focus during class, my head was filled with the listless cries of the cicadas, and the feeling of being out of place that I couldn't get rid of. Everybody stand up. Bow. Goodbye. Thankfully, Mion was still class president. For some reason, that was a relief. Oh, was there even a club in this world? If I could receive the baptism of those crazy club games, maybe it would clear up my feelings a little. Probably not. On days we had club, she'd always call all the members right when school ended. Expecting that, I stayed in my seat as everyone ran out into the hallway. Satsuko was one of those who dashed out. She was flying headlong towards the entrance, jostling the other kids her age. Sachi left too, following behind her. Mion and Rena talked to each other as they got ready to leave. As far as it looked, we didn't have club. The club was annoying at times, but I yearned for it so much now. Was there no club in this world? As I started to feel lonely, I saw a grin spread across Mion's face before she and Rena approached me. Normally that grin would look gross, but when Mion did it, it didn't feel bad. Our eyes met. Thank goodness. Even this world had the after-school club it was supposed to. Hey, Rika-chama. Got a moment before you go home? Is it club? For the first time since coming to this world, I smiled. Why would you ask? She just said before you go home. I had no idea what was going on in this world, so having one of my hopes come true made me very happy, for the moment, before I have it crushed. No, not that. You're on duty tomorrow, right? Here's the logbook. In club, huh? What, did you want to be in my club too, Rika-chan? Oh, me. I gleaned two things from Mion's few words. One was that I still wasn't a club member. The other was that, even so, the club still existed. For me, right now, that was an incredibly happy thought. Then, Rika Furude, I hereby grant you permission to join my club. Mi-chan, you're being weird. That means the club doesn't actually exist, and Mion's just playing around with her. Rena laughed like it was a funny joke. But why? But even if you're in the same club, you still can't do club things with us. Well, why not? I mean, your house and my house are in opposite directions, right? Me? Going home club. Oh. When Mion said her club, she probably meant the club of not having a club. The going home club. And she must have been saying we went home in different directions, which was why I couldn't do club activities, going home together, with her. In other words, the club doesn't exist in this world either. Mi-chan, can't we have a club activities with Rika-chan once in a while? But we go in opposite directions. Maybe it's okay from time to time, maybe. After I realized I'd have to go home all alone, Rena said she'd leave school with me. That kind consideration was just like the Rena I knew so well. We didn't have club, but Mion and Rena were still Mion and Rena. Sorry, but I'll have to pass. I gotta get back quick for my job at my uncle's place. Oh, then Rika-chan and I will have our after-school going home club. Thank you, Rena. The three of us headed for the entrance. Our outdoor shoes were the only ones left. There are less slippers here than I remember. Yes, I decided to naturally mention it. Rena responded right away. It's lonely, but what can we do? As they say, you gotta look for a nice big tree when you seek shelter. Anyway, sorry about this, but I'm gonna get going. I'll leave Rika-chan's escort to you, Reina. Okay. Reina? Yes? What is it? Nothing. Rena was the kind Rena I knew, but her name wasn't Rena. Rena. That was Rena's real name, but in the worlds I knew, she had thrown it aside. Which meant she hadn't given up being Rena? Or her path leading today was different from the ones in the worlds I knew? I knew Rena hated herself because she considered herself responsible for her mother's divorce. And as she'd messed up both her life and herself, she would have decided to part ways with that old self, start over, and rename herself Rena. But that didn't happen? That wasn't the only thing I learned from this conversation either. Regarding the number of people in the class, when I mentioned there weren't many people, they acted like there was a reason. The dam. That meant the current number of students in this world hadn't been that way from the start. It had decreased to this number. They must have been all been murdered. Mion ran off, and Ren and I left school together. When we went across the schoolyard, I saw Satoko fooling around, playing tag. Are you looking at Satoko-chan? Me. Her name was different, but she still picked up on these things quickly. I'm sure Satoko-chan wasn't trying to be mean when she hit you with the ball. Forgive her, okay? I don't really mind. Rena, no. Reina seemed to be trying to smooth it over. It kind of sounded like Satoko and I weren't normally friendly with one another. So I asked, are Satoko and I not friends? Of course you are. You're both in the same class. The way she said that was enough of an answer. Now I knew why Satoko acted so coldly to me in the nurse's office. In this world, Satoko and I weren't friends. Maybe that made sense. After all, if Sachi was alive and well, then Satoko would spend all her time with him. The reason Satoko and I got to the point we could call close was because Satoko ended up all alone. I asked her to stay at my house, and we started living together. Of course, we were friends before that too, just nowhere near how close we were in 1983. Maybe, in the end, our relationship was nothing more than me sitting in Sachi's empty seat. When I thought about that, when I considered what would happen if Sachi was around in June 1983, maybe this was the most natural future. With regretful eyes, I watched as Satoko frolicked about. Satoko looked like she was having a lot of fun with her other classmates. She would never notice me going home from school. I'm going to stop thinking about it so much. Before the true world I need to reach, this world is all but a defective one. I don't want Sachi in my world. I don't need to bother trying to understand a broken world. There's a lot less stores open, too. When we went through downtown, with all its stores with their shutters down, Reina spoke up. I didn't care about this world anymore, but as a classmate going home with her, I answered unconsciously. I wonder why so many closed up. Well, it only makes sense. They can only do business until next year anyway. They're getting less and less customers too. It's not strange that someone would want to close up shop early. Why won't they do business after next year? They can't. They're getting evicted. Evicted? It sucks, but there's nothing we can do. And even if the village sinks, it won't destroy our souls, the ones that belong here. I gave a start when I heard that. That couldn't. No. It was possible. In every single world, the story of Hinamizawa being submerged under an artificial lake was always present. But the Area Institute, working from the shadows, would make sure that the dam project was cancelled. If there was no Area Institute around to make them cancel it, that meant the dam project was proceeding as planned, didn't it? Then the dam will... I heard they've decided to flood this area next year. I think it'll take quite a few days to submerge, but I don't really want to watch. Maybe after it's all a lake, but watching it go under would be sad. Wasn't anyone opposed to it? At first there were, but we can't be selfish when it comes to helping the nation grow. I don't really understand, but apparently the government people were really nice and talked to us a lot about it. The dam conflict I was hearing from Reina wasn't even a conflict in this world. Everything regarding the dam was completely different from the worlds I knew. They had proposed the Hinamizuwa Dam project, which was the same as the worlds I knew. Relations between the nation, who wanted to evict us, and the residents who refused, gradually worsened and eventually broke down. It snowballed into a dire conflict over the dam. But in this world, it had been different from the very beginning. I just realized I don't have my phone. Oh well. I'll find it after. First off, relations between the country and the village were stormy at the very, very beginning, but apparently that was resolved very quickly. The Sonozaki and Kimiyoshi families negotiated on the village's behalf, and they accepted the eviction on the promise of a large sum of compensation money. After that, the conversation was between the three families and the villagers. Nobody wanted to part with the soil of their ancestors. But for the villagers, who certainly couldn't be called wealthy, the money the nation would provide was no trivial matter. They worried over it to no end. Rumors flew about, wondering if Oyashiro-sama's curse would befall them if they abandoned these lands. But the Furude family head, my father, in other words, declared we couldn't be cursed if we built Oyashiro-sama a new shrine somewhere else, and remembered to honor him. Despite many objections, the elderly agreed on a cooling-off period of several years. In addition to the compensation money, they demanded from the government the movement of the Furude shrine, the graveyard, and its symbolic trees, in addition to the guarantee of a new place they could call Hinamizuwa. And if those requests were fulfilled, they would consider agreeing to the eviction. So that means all the parents are still alive. The first deaths, didn't happen for sure. The nation consented to this. They proposed preferential occupation rights of reclaimed public housing land in Shishibone. With regards to giving the town a new name, they considered the residents' proposal as most important, and they consented to the movement of the shrine, graveyard, and other locations as well. In conclusion, though, there were several years of turmoil. The dam conflict never happened in this world. Everything was resolved through talking alone. And the villagers had actually agreed to the dam project. Actual construction on the dam had begun a few years ago, and apparently construction vehicles were a constant source of traffic on the village's wider roads. And the eviction deadline was set at the end of April next year, so more than a few families had begun moving out in advance. One closed shop's shutters had a worn paper notice on it. On it was written, "Our deepest gratitude for your many years of patronage." I spotted a few other notices with "opposed to the dam" on them, but those had deteriorated over time, a silent indication that the dam war was a thing of the past now. I don't think all the kids in class are moving into the public housing. Satsuko-chan's family is supposedly moving somewhere else. It's a little lonely to think we won't be able to see all our friends after next year. The village I was born and grew up in being submerged was very sad. But all my classmates, enjoying this day to the fullest, even though they knew that, seemed so strong to me. And if the dam war never took place, that would cause several other effects. For example, the relationship between the Sonozaki and the Hojo families. At the beginning of the dam conflict, the Hojos declared themselves in favor of the dam, with the Sonozakis in opposition, and the former ended up a scapegoat of the village for a long time. I want to check how long this game is since it has 3 scenarios. How long? Wait. People say only 5 hours? So for me, it'd be... Oh wait, completionists and whatnot. So probably around 9 hours at the minimum. Okay. That trouble never occurred in this world. Oops. There we go. Satsuko-chan's family? I don't know. I think they're normal. I don't think they have much particularly in common with Michan's family. Does Satsuko get along with her family? Oh, you mean her father? Even without the dam conflict, the presence of a stepfather would be a burden on Satsuko's mind. And with the L5 symptoms appearing, she would push him from the viewing platform at the park and be given into the care of her malicious aunt and uncle, because her stepfather's presence would be the very gateway to Sato's later unfortunate fate. When I think about it now, maybe their awkwardness with each other at first made for a good memory. They aren't connected by blood, so they tried hard to be a father and daughter, and maybe now they have a stronger bond than she would have with her biological parents. I've talked to them a bunch of times, but he's a good person that works hard to support his family. You mean Sato's current father? Yep. Which meant, in this world, none of the dice threatening Satoko had come upon a 1. For Satoko, did that make this world a happy place for her? Yep. My walk home with Reino was very significant for me understanding this world. And I found out that this world's composition betrayed every last bit of my common sense. So basically, everyone right now is happy. Like literally. Probably. Shion has Sachi, same with Satoko. Mion never went crazy. Keiichi's not here, obviously, so he won't. And then Reina doesn't have her paranoia. The reason Reina wasn't Rena. That was different from the very start. First, the Ryugu family didn't move to Ibaraki. There we go. They had lived in Hinamizawa this entire time. Her mother was still working as a designer at a small company in the city. Her father had switched careers, and now he was a salesman for his wife's designs. The couple must have been on good terms for one to design things and the other to sell them. As always, her mother's position seemed to be stronger, but their relationship was an average one, and divorce, at the very least, seemed impossible. That meant a nice, peaceful family for Reina. That satisfied her fully, and she even said that she lived a happy life. The fact that she knew that without going through hardships, though, she really was still Rena. I asked about the Takano clinic, too. It was as the big Dr. Yamamoto had said. The Takano of Takano Clinic was indeed the one who had been Mio Takano's adopted grandfather. Hifumi Takano. Right after the war, he built a surprisingly grand clinic in Hinamizawa, which had no doctors, and became a celebrity to the villagers. I learned that there was a monument dedicated to Takano in the place of the one dedicated to Irie in the worlds I knew. After Takano's passing, there was no way to succeed his place in the clinic, and for a long time it had been left empty. That was when a man from Okonomiya named Yamamoto arrived and breathed new life into the clinic. Takano had discovered the Hinamizawa syndrome and searched for research sponsors, but found none. And eventually, Mio Takano would succeed him. But what if the older Takano had found a sponsor? Neither Mio Takano nor Irie would appear, and the Takano clinic being built right after the war would make sense. Which meant that Takano, in this world, had been blessed with good dice rolls. At this point, I had a vague idea about something. Weren't these dice rolls the exact opposite of the ones for the world I knew well? The people hadn't changed at all. But the dice God had cast for these people were all reversed. So it made sense that it had turned into such a strange world for me. I learned one more thing from talking to Reina, too. In this world, I had no friends. I was all alone. Keiichi never transferred to our school, we didn't have a club, and Satoko had no connection to me. So maybe it was only natural. At that point, I finally realized why Reina had sympathized with me going home, and done her going home club activities with me. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Huh? Oh, I see. For a moment I was confused when she said goodbye, since we weren't in front of the temple, but I quickly understood. We were in front of the Furude main house. Since Takano never appeared, there was no area institute, nor any research into Hinamizawa syndrome, and so, my parents never died. At first, my parents cooperated with the researchers, but when I fell ill with a high fever one day, they stopped cooperating, had some kind of trouble, and were assassinated. My mother was the hysterical type, when she made a fuss, setting her down took a while. And because she made a fuss, the Erie Institute, which wanted to do its research in secret, naturally wanted to make sure she didn't talk. She had held such an attitude, even knowing how shady the Institute was. So in a sense, I couldn't deny that she reaped what she sowed. Ha ha! In any case, no matter how many times I did this over, no matter how many times I warned her, it never worked, and I resigned myself to the fact that I'd no longer have parents by 1981. And I had repeated it many times. I'd seen my parents for dozens of years in total, so I was fed up with them. We weren't on good terms to begin with anyway. And now, in June of 1983, they were here again. You weren't on good terms with them because you were learning from Hanyu, though. I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye. Goodbye. Nippon. After seeing Reina off, I looked at my real home. I saw my mother patting out a dried futon in the yard. In normal worlds, they would always die, but in this one, they were alive the whole time. I found myself unsure of how to talk to my real mother. Is that you, Rika? Welcome home. Me. I'm home. Go wash your hands and rinse out your mouth, and then get your books ready for tomorrow. Did you get any homework? Yes, she was my mother, all right. Honestly speaking, I wasn't used to the Furde main house. It was my true home, but it had only ever been my home before 1983. Like a prison of time while I waited in melancholy for the day Keiichi transferred here. But Keiichi wouldn't transfer here, and my parents wouldn't die. Which meant in this world, I would never get out of this prison. But maybe that was a weird way to think about it. Without a dead-end fate, there was no victory or defeat, no destiny or miracles. This was my actual home. It was nothing more and nothing less. I went to my room, put down my book bag, and took a breath. Usually, when I was by myself, Hanyu would appear. But in this world, she hadn't shown up. How long are you planning on wasting time? Hurry up and appear. Take me back to my original world. I knew by now this world was odd and filled with what-ifs. I'd had it up to here with my exploration of this alternate universe. But Hanyu didn't appear. Oh, that's right. Hanyu was by herself in the ritual storehouse a lot. Maybe she was there right now. In any case, whatever else happened, I just wanted to see Hanyu. I put on my shoes and ran out towards the shrine. As I turned my back on my annoying mother, who called after me, asking if I'd really rinsed out my mouth. In a world where my father was alive, it was hard to get the key to the storehouse. But thanks to the innumerable worlds I'd been through, I found a way to get into the storehouse without it. I could hear the elders having a pleasant talk in the assembly hall, my father's laughs mixed in with theirs. My father hated me ever going near the ritual storehouse. Well, considering what it stored, I could sort of understand why he wouldn't want to let his beloved daughter inside it. Torture. After making sure nobody was looking, I climbed up a tree growing behind the storehouse. My climb didn't go as smoothly as when Satoko had shown me she could do it. In any case, I crawled up stubbornly and jumped down onto the storehouse roof. I was a little scared of jumping. I'd climbed pretty high off the ground. Even a centenarian, which can't escape the danger of heights. If I recalled right, there was a broken lattice window on the roof, and you could get in and out through there. This world was betraying all my expectations and giving me the exact opposite. I considered that maybe you couldn't go in and out through it anymore. But, in the place Satoko once told me about, it was broken just like she said, and a child would be able to fit inside. Even trivial things like this were a relief. Maybe just the sun setting in the west would be a relief for me right now. Because in this world, it could always set in the east. Yes, this discomfort I felt at having to doubt everything made me feel dizzy and sick. Hanyu? Hanyu? Are you there? No answer. I was too afraid to call out again. Because maybe if I did, I still wouldn't get any answer. For me, personally, Hanyu not existing in this world was the one dice roll that couldn't happen. Hanyu? Hanyu! Now I felt something I couldn't describe. The presence of someone, but not a person. Something only I could perceive. The presence of Hanyu. But Hanyu always answered me when I called for her. She wasn't now. What did that mean? But she was here. She was. I couldn't help poking my head through the roof. I climbed down a bundle of hanging chains and entered. Hanyu! Hanyu! Where are you? Answer me! Rika! Rika! Where are you? This time I heard her for sure. There was no doubt. Hanyu! I'm right here. Where are you? Maybe she's in the Oyasho-sama statue with that special sword. I can't see you at all. Rika! Rika! Answer me! Hanyu's feeble words implied she was actually the one who couldn't hear my voice. I looked for a place where I could hear her better. Before I realized it, I went to the altar in front of the holy vessel. Something that looked like a small crystal ball was on the altar, and I sensed it giving off a faint light. That was where Hanyu's voice seemed to be coming from. The ball was about the size of a large toy marble, but it was seated respectfully on a small cushion, which told me it was no ordinary stone. I took the crystal ball in my hand and pressed it to my ear. Rika, if you can hear me, please answer again. Rika! Rika! There was no doubt. I was hearing Hanyu's voice from this crystal ball, and it sounded like it was searching for me, growing more distant all the while. Hanyu, I can hear you. It's me, Rika. I'm right here. Rika! Rika! I can hear your voice. Where are you? I can't find you. Your voice is so distant. I don't understand. Please, call louder. I'm here. I'm right here. Why can't I hear your voice from this crystal ball? Wait, no, that's not important. I'm right here, right in front of the altar in the storehouse. Hanyu! Hanyu! I can hear your voice. I'm searching for you now. Please don't let go of the fragment. Keep on calling my name, louder. I'm here. Hanyu! Come, hurry! Hanyu! Hanyu! For a while I kept shouting her name as if I'd gone mad. It was like clinging to a tin can telephone right before the string snapped. If Hanyu's voice cut off in the middle, if she left me behind, alone, in the darkness of the storehouse, that was scarier than anything else I could imagine. So, as she told me to, I shouted her name over and over again. Hanyu had to be searching for me by listening for my voice. I didn't know what her situation was, but it seemed Hanyu and I were far away from one another, that we were immeasurably distant. And as the crystal ball's light strengthened, I knew she was coming closer. At first, the light I sensed from it had been faint, but now it was bright as a weak miniature light bulb. I could clearly see it was shining. Rika, what's going on? I can't enter the world you're in. What? What are you saying? I'm the one who needs help here. I don't care how, just come here. Take me out of this world. Rika, please listen carefully. For some reason, your world rejects me. This should be impossible. Given that she's both a paranormal existence and a deity, I couldn't imagine any situation that would make her anxious enough for her to weakly say, "This is impossible." All I could do was keep on wailing half insanely for her to do something, anything. But I can't do anything. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. This is the first time. This isn't possible. Stop acting so miserable and hurry up and do something already. Anything. I can't, Rika. Your world is giving off a power that rejects me. If you don't do something about that, there's nothing I can do. Stop saying things that don't make sense. What do you mean a power that rejects you? You're a deity. That can't be. You're right. It can't be. But there's no fragment on this side, so I can't line up the pieces. I don't know how, but the fragment is lost somewhere in your world. Fragment? What do you mean? Explain it so I can understand. I'll do anything I can, Continuing to act so deranged won't help with anything. I managed to figure out what Hanyu wanted to say, and now I knew I had to eliminate the obstacle. The situation utterly escaped me, but it seemed like if I didn't do something, Hanyu couldn't appear in front of me. I'm sorry for losing my composure. I'll calm down now, so explain again, please. What on earth is going on? Rika, I don't know why this is, but part of a fragment, which should be in the world of the gods, seems to be lost in the world you're in right now. As an analogy, it's like the key you need to unlock a door being locked inside that room. What's a fragment? What appears as the world to you is called a fragment in the higher dimensions. We've been connecting those fragments like a jigsaw puzzle. Looking at those fragments, it's the Japanese text on those pictures, which is understandable. I don't blame them at all. And it's all the ham fist pictures. Like a jigsaw puzzle. We've been connecting those fragments like a jigsaw puzzle to walk between worlds. I see. I think I understand the analogy. The world I'm in now is a fragment, a piece of a jigsaw puzzle, but something happened to the part that connects to the rest, and it won't fit with the pieces around it, right? That's right. That missing piece always has to be on this side. But now, for some reason, it's on that side instead. The fragment should be in the world of the gods, but for some reason, it fell into the human world, and now it's missing? That's about right. Oh. Alright, I just have to do something about that fragment, right? I'll do what you say. Where is that fragment? And what should I do with it? Oh. Is this really the time to be owing? Where is that fragment thing? And what does it look like? I don't know. What? How am I supposed to search for it if you don't know? I don't understand either. From here, I can only hear your voice. I can't interfere at all with that world as I am now. But if it's called a fragment, then will it look like a glowing piece of crystal like this? I think? That's probably right. But I can't even imagine what shape it would take if something that belonged in a higher dimension ended up in the human world. I felt all my energy drain out of me, and I heaved a sigh. We don't even know what it looks like. This is the worst. Anyway, if I do find it, what would I do? How would I get it back into the world of the gods? Oh. You don't even know that? I'm sorry. It's the first time this has happened. I don't really know either. Why are the lines skipping all about? I laughed, mostly at myself, and before I realized it, I couldn't stop my tears from falling. After getting sent to this crazy world, I don't even know how to get back. Today, of all days, I was in such high spirits, going to the pool with my friends. That tiny fragment of happy days we'd all finally obtained after escaping the dead end of June 1983. And just because I was messing around on the way back, just a little, I got sent to this horrible world. But if I'm going to complain about that, in the end, it's my own fault for not being careful on the road, isn't it? Oh. I lost my balance on my bicycle, got thrown off, and then fell into the car there. A common traffic accident. A common death of a child. It just happened to be me this time. The future I had won after over 100 years. Now, just because of that, everything was in pieces. I could wail all I want, but the only thing at fault was my own carelessness. In fact, I should be thankful to Hanyu for letting me live. But sending me to a world like this, it's too cruel. No, it wasn't as though Hanyu sent me here because she wanted to. I know that. It's like you remember, Rika. Our power has been wearing away. And with the last of that power, we reached our victory. So we were never supposed to be able to use it again. You mean you used that power to save me? Yes. There was nothing else I could do. Rika, your body flew off your bike. And if the dice had come up better, you might have fallen on the car and made it out injured, but alive. But you were unlucky. When you flew off, you landed right in front of the car's tires. From Hanyu's words colored with sadness, It felt like she'd watched me fly off, get run over by the car, and die. Everyone had their mouths wide open, in a daze. The car's brakes screeched as it crashed into the guardrail, but nobody was listening. And then, Satsuko, she ran over to you, but you looked, oh, your face was gone. Ooh. The car crushed my head flat. Chie was always talking about this, wasn't she? Never to play in the road. I could imagine the rest of the story without Hanyu telling me. That fun day we had was wiped out in an instant by my careless fooling around. We dove together into the longest June 1983 of these past 100 years, and the peaceful future we finally reached through the sharing of countless miracles was wiped out in an instant. My corpse was too horrible to look at. Satsuko came running over first, and then everyone else came, and they all wished they'd wake up from that nightmare, until they lost all hope, broke down, and wept. Compared to that heart-splitting sadness, the one who was actually careless, grumbling about wanting to go home since this world was uncomfortable, counted for nothing. Did that mean, in the end, it was all my own fault? I had struggled through so many years to reach that future, and I'd carefully lost it by nobody's fault but my own. And I was blessed since Hanyu was here for me, so I should be thankful. Because if that had happened to someone other than me, they'd just lose their life, and nothing more. Just the fact that there was hope, even if it was only a single tiny ray, surely meant I was fortunate. Thanks. Oh? Idiots die in accidents from carelessness all the time in Japan, and I was one of them. I should have just died without complaints. But thanks to you, even though things have gotten strange, I'm alive. And I'm sure it will be really, really hard, but there is still a way to return to that world. Oh, let's review. To bring me back to the original world, Hanyu, you need to come here, right? Yes, of course. I want to return to the original world with you, Rika. Naturally. We won that world after 100 years of struggle. We're going back. I would spend another 100 years to do it. I won't lose. I won't lose heart. Just for fooling around a little on the road, being sentenced to another 100 years. That won't make me cry. Cry. Rika, even in the world beyond, everyone is praying for you. They're praying that, even if it costs them their lives, that you turn back time and make it so the accident never happened. I think those prayers were why I was able to find you, Rika. In this storehouse, in which I could smell only dust, I thought I caught the scent of incense. I couldn't see it, couldn't hear it, but somehow I knew. It was my funeral, and I thought I could hear them. My friends heartbroken grieving over my coffin. Their cries were incredibly sad, so painful, as though it would tear me apart. I understood. My carelessness. It had destroyed not only my life, but everyone else's happiness. I'll go back. I'm going back. I will return to that world no matter what. Ooh, no matter how narrow the path may be. I'll do it. I'll go back for sure. Ooh. My tears, filled with sadness, mixed with determination, mixed with saltiness, dropped to the floor. Rika, being locked in that world is the same as the dead end of 1983. Is it? It may look like an inescapable fate, but you absolutely can escape it. I know. Keiichi taught me that. And even Takano taught me too. Fate was thinner than a goldfish scooping net. And strong enough feelings can reshape the future. That's right, Rika. That's the spirit. Maybe it was because of your carelessness, but you've been given the chance to atone for it and make it go away. That's a really, really lucky thing. I know. Normal people would be starting over in their next lives, but I alone got one last chance. I know what that means. Rika, I want you to somehow find the fragment rejecting me. I'll see if I can figure anything out in this world. I'll have to make do without any hints. Also, as long as you aren't in this world, if I die here, that's the end, right? Yes. My power doesn't affect that world right now. So please, Rika, be really careful. I know. I'll never fool around on the road again. We don't have any hints, but I'm this village's deity, and this village is all I've ever watched over. If this power can interfere with me, then I think the power must be in the village too. Somewhere in this village. If it has anything to do with you, to be honest, I think it would be in this ritual implement storehouse. Rika, is there anything in that storehouse that isn't in the usual worlds? I don't know. I can't tell right away. There's no proof it would be obvious, right? If it's enough to interfere with me, Rika, you've stepped into places incredibly close to the world of the gods before, so you may be able to sense it. Another thing to worry about. I don't think anything on this altar, including this crystal ball, has changed, at least. But this is a strange crystal ball. It's interesting how, for a mere marble, it's on display in such an important place. Right now, you're holding the Furude Shrine treasure, the Kamu no Mikoto no Ri. Long ago, when I performed a miracle at the Furude Shrine, I left it there as proof. After such a long time, most of the power inside is gone. But luckily for us, it's the only source of power I have that affects you. If it had more power, or if I could prevail against this, I might have been able to go to the world you're in. Which means, I'll only be able to talk to you with this crystal ball for a limited time. Yes. Rika, can you hear my voice? From here, your voice sounds like it's slowly fading away. I get it. It's like a transceiver about to run out of battery power. Alright, I won't contact you unless it's important. That way, we can talk for a little bit longer, right? Probably. Then that's enough. I'll rummage around the storehouse now. It could be hidden anywhere if it's the same size as this crystal ball. And it might not be in the storehouse either. I'm going to need perseverance for this job. Rika, please, do your best. All I can do is stay here and cheer for you. And even the words I can use for that are limited now. It's fine. Mark my words. I'll open the door to this world and invite you in. I promise we'll go back to that fun world together. So you do your best too. If you learn anything that could be a clue, tell me. I will. Then that's it. I'm going to stop talking now. See you again, Hanyu. Whoa. I promise. Once we get back to the last world, I'll fill the refrigerator with cream puffs for you. I'll look forward to that promise. Hanyu's voice gently vanished, like water seeping into sand. But that didn't mean Hanyu had vanished. It was kind of like I was talking to Hanyu on a public phone, and my 10 yen ran out. We may have been in different worlds, but we were cooperating, trying to get out of this world and back to the last one. When I thought about it, Hanyu had always been an ally in my life. In this world, that ally was gone. Maybe that was a fitting punishment for wasting my life by being careless. To get back to the last world, I would pile up as many stones as I needed to, for these were the banks of the river Styx. Nirvana from my viewpoint, as one who had lost her life in the previous world. But I'll get back. I swear I'll get back there. Then, suddenly, the inside of the storehouse brightened. Her dad. Someone had just turned on the switch for the naked bulb hanging from the ceiling. And then, with a heavy clank, the door opened. My father appeared there. His face was like a demon's. Ah, that was right. I had entered the cornered-off ritual implement storehouse. I only received the right to enter the storehouse when I succeeded them as the head of the Furude family. In other words, in a world with my parents alive, I wasn't allowed to come in here. Rika, how did you get in here? How many times have I told you never to enter the storehouse? My father was in a rage. Jesus, going quick. Thanks to the property imprinted into one's very genes that made children tremble when their father looks at them with a scary face, I reflexively cringed with fear. It's not just their father. Anyone looking at you with a scary face could do that. He grabbed me by the back of my neck and took me outside. And then I ended up being disciplined, something I had forgotten for a very long time. Ah, my parents being here is such a bother. Just when I thought I'd been lucky that they made it through the year 1981, they're getting in the way of me returning to the final world. In the storehouse, I'd been shouting Hanyu's name pretty loudly, so he'd probably noticed. I would investigate the storehouse for real tomorrow, but I'd have to take extreme caution so that my father didn't find me. In the middle of the night, unable to sleep face up on my futon because my rear end swelled up from all the spanking, I bit my pillow and cried again. Then thought back over what I had to do. This was my room, my futon. But this wasn't where I was supposed to sleep. The futon I was supposed to go home to was in the small house on the second floor of the renovated warehouse, the one next to Satoko's. But in this world, the youth group was probably still using it as a meeting place, so my futon obviously wouldn't be there. Then, what futon was I supposed to use in this world? Not the one I'm sleeping in, obviously. Punishment for doing something so stupid and careless, bringing the future we all want to nothing. I needed to find what was keeping Hanyu away so I could call her here. It would take a lot of effort. For that reason, I needed to build up my energy and get some sleep. Shedding tears was nothing but a waste of time and stamina. I knew that, but until I fell asleep, I wept into my pillow. So my assumption for this fragment would be either the dam or the Takano Clinic. The Takano Clinic because if Hifumi's the biggest change, if he was denied, Takano would have... what's her name? Mio would have taken over and so on. And that would lead to the dam project being cancelled and everything else. I had hoped Satsuko would be there when I woke up that morning. I'd hoped this baffling world was just a half-awake dream of mine. So when I awoke, not to a familiar ceiling, but to the one in the fruited main house, I could feel nothing but disappointment. My mind hazy, I recalled the situation I'd been put into. Thanks to my own carelessness, I'd gotten lost in this strange world. Hanyu's power couldn't reach here, so it would be incredibly difficult to escape. It was like trying to climb up the spider's thread to paradise. But the spider's thread was still there. No matter how thin it was, its presence meant there was still a chance to discover what was blocking Hanyu's power, and I didn't even know what it looked like. The only possible clue was that Hanyu was the deity of Hinamizawa, so it was probably in the village somewhere. I picked up the crystal ball, which I had snuck out of the ritual implement storehouse. The ball gave off a weak and somehow unnatural light. I pressed it to my forehead. I could sense a faint presence that only I, as a witch, could feel. I was sure that whatever I needed to find, I would get the same feeling from it as this. But again, like this crystal ball, I'd probably have to hold it to my forehead to sense anything. It didn't seem like things would be as simple as wandering about until I felt something. But if it was related to Hanyu's power like the crystal ball was, it was almost certainly in that storehouse, and definitely not somewhere else in Hinamizawa. Unfortunately, the storehouse was a complete mess of everything from ancient torture devices to piles of old documents to mountains of trash I didn't even know how to use. The only place with any semblance of cleanliness was the space around the vessel and the altar. Finding anything, especially an object as small as this crystal ball, would be no simple matter. "Rika, eat your breakfast and hurry on to school," I heard my mother's voice from the kitchen. The school in this world wasn't the one I went to. If I had the time to go somewhere I didn't belong, then I should be using it to search the storehouse. But there was no proof my search would only take 1 or 2 days. I really hated to say it, but since I didn't even know what it looked like, maybe I needed to prepare myself for the search to take years. If I didn't go to school, Chie, ever conscientious, would call the house to see if I was staying home that day. If that happened, it would cause trouble with both the school and my parents. I couldn't imagine how much time this search would take. If my parents grew suspicious, things would get harder. Slow and steady wins the race, I guess. Although it was frustrating, for weekdays, it would be better to pretend I was going to school like normal. I let out a languid sigh, got up, and decided to eat breakfast. During mealtime, my mother's ramblings about how I was never allowed to go into the ritual storehouse again steadily made the food taste worse. My mother was always insistent and long-winded. I hated this part of her. The elders in the village laughed and said she couldn't help it, since she did it for her only beloved daughter, but to me, she was just a nuisance. Tough love wasn't what I needed at the moment. The only thing I could be thankful for was, maybe, I didn't have to make breakfast for myself. But I could do it on my own, so I almost would have rather she left it to me. After I was done eating and started getting ready for school, my mother continued to nag me about making it on time. Ah, how aggravating. Maybe going to school wasn't so bad. I wouldn't have to see my mother's face for half a day. I thanked her for the food, cleaned my plate and utensils in the sink, and left immediately for school. If everything was going to betray my expectations anyway, I wish class would too. But even in this world, class went the exact same as the world I knew. I thought I had escaped to that world, and now it was repeating. Thinking that way made me feel even more listless. Normally I'd distract myself by teasing Satoko, but her seat was far away from mine. She was probably also so bored with class she didn't know what to do with herself. Sachi, earnestly studying the next seat over, was constantly trying to get her to focus. Mion seemed to be butting into Reina's business, too. But they weren't fooling around. It was a strange, though pleasant sight. They were helping one another learn. Actually, they weren't the only pleasant sight. Everyone in the classroom was like that. I felt like I was the only one left out. Outsider. I didn't know whether my seat was in its own row because of the odd number of students, or if I had chosen the seat on purpose in this world, but it felt like my seat was separated from the rest of the classroom. When lunchtime came, I felt even more alienated. My classmates formed groups with friends and took out their food. The club members who would always eat with me weren't here. Satoko was part of a circle of several friends, including her brother. There was no place for me to wedge myself into. Mion and Reina were sitting face to face as they ate. No room for me there either. You could just sit to their sides and create a triangle, but hey. And nobody asked me if I wanted to eat with them. And they had fun eating their own meals. So this seemed natural, like it was something that happened every day. For a short while, I waited, hoping for Satoko or Mion or Reina to invite me over. After the clock's minute hand moved 5, and then 10 places, I realized I might even be left behind in eating, and finally gave up and opened up my bento box. Inside were the leftovers of last night's burned hamburg steak and white rice with nori seaweed that was now sticky, spinach wrapped with gooey nori, and the remains of kimpira, which with chopped burdock root, also burned. I guess I had forgotten about that. For some reason, my mother overcooked everything. Summer is dangerous if you don't let the heat in, was a favorite phrase of hers. She would cook steaks until they were rock hard. Even when she made fish, she'd turn half their insides to ash. Even Satoko was better than that. At least she knew how hot to cook things. And when I learned how to cook from Hanyu and started to make things better than my mother, she must not have been happy. It tasted terrible, too. No presentation either. If Mion decided to have a bento contest and I only had this, I'd end up in last place. But there was no club in this world, so I didn't have to worry about that. Satoko's happy laughter not being directed at me made me feel sad. Suddenly, our eyes met. Did my feelings get through? Satoko burst out of her seat and glared at me. What are you staring at? If you have something to say, say it. I don't have anything to say. Stop it, Satoko. You just happened to look at each other, didn't you? It didn't just happen. She was staring at me this whole time. It was getting gross. Come on. Satoko and her friends began whispering amongst themselves while looking at me. I couldn't hear what they said, but I could easily imagine them enjoying themselves. I'm sorry. I won't stare at you. I hope not. You are making my cream croquets taste worse. I angled my desk a little so I couldn't see Satoko and the others. At first, I had called this world Satoko cold, but it looked like I was mistaken. This world, Satoko either didn't like me or outright hated me. And the other kids close to my age seemed to have formed a community around her, with no place for me in it. So they all hated me too. The hardened, ash-like steak tasted of salt. Why did I have to feel this sad and lonely when I ate? Because you didn't choose to talk to Mion and Reina? In all the other worlds, all the club members would be enjoying lunch together. Satoko would be there, and Rena and Mion and Keiichi. Everyone would be having fun, and spending their break cheerfully and noisily. That was when Reina came over and peered into my bento box. Rika-chan, you have steak and spinach for lunch today? That looks good. It was clear that Reina had come over to try and comfort my distress, and for some reason, that was frustrating, so I didn't want to answer her. When I stayed silent, she held out an octopus-shaped sausage in front of me. I'll trade your spinach for my octopus, okay? Reina, trying to be nice as I ate lunch alone, hated by my classmates. I just couldn't accept it. I suddenly said I was going to wash my hands, then left, and in a bathroom stall, I covered my face with toilet paper and cried. The tears soaked through the paper and crinkled it up, but I didn't care. This was fine. It was better if I didn't have friends in this world. I had plenty of friends in the one I needed to return to, and if I only made friends here, they'd only help me find my way back quicker. There, even Satoko was my irreplaceable best friend, and all the club members, who would never leave me alone during lunch hour, were waiting for me. Why would I be sad that some Satoko I didn't know was being mean to me in a world I didn't care about? Why would I be? But, despite the lies I told myself, I couldn't stop crying for a while. I decided to steel my resolve and wait for school to end. Then I'd run back home, say I was going out to play, and sneak into the ritual storehouse again. That was the only way I could get back to my original world. I had to try and do my best for that purpose alone. Okay. I looked into the mirror in the bathroom to see a face red from crying. If Chie saw me like this, things would probably get even more complicated. I washed my face, then spent the rest of lunch break quietly in the corner of the classroom. Skip to after school, maybe? After school, I literally dashed out of the building. It would be a huge pain if I ended up caught in the rush of the other classmates as they headed out to go play. I think Sachi called after me, but I ignored him. He was probably just trying to apologize for his sister about what happened during lunch. I didn't care about that. I didn't want to stay in this horrible world a second more than I needed to. I ran full speed back to the house, ignored my mother when she asked, as usual, if I had any homework, and searched for a lantern. Then I told her I was going out to play, and without waiting for a response, burst out of the house. Then I went around the shrine and looked for my father. I saw a note hanging on the assembly hall that said there was a shrine association meeting. I could hear my father's voice amidst the light-hearted chatter. It was the same opportunity I had yesterday. Today, I'd have to be careful not to let on that I was inside. After making sure nobody was looking, I climbed up the tree I'd gotten the hang of yesterday. I had been scared of the height before, but I wasn't afraid any longer, probably because I cried my eyes out and resolved myself during lunch. What I really had to be afraid of wasn't heights, or my parents, or the cold-hearted Satoko. It was not being able to return to my original world. The next scariest thing would be losing contact with Hanyu, I think. The main thing would be dying. In the darkness of the storehouse, I took the crystal ball out of my pocket. Its weak glow seemed a little more energetic than yesterday. Maybe if she rested, a little of her power would come back. Nevertheless, it was still weak. If I wasted it on fruitless conversation, the light might go out entirely. I firmly squashed down the desire to check and make sure I could still call her, and turned on the lantern. It was time to go treasure hunting. Treasure. Was there anything around? Anything only I could feel? Something that felt the same as this crystal ball, somewhere. I closed my eyes, honed my senses, and hoped. But all I heard were the cries of cicadas. I hadn't expected anything else. It looked like this would be a tough nut to crack. Too optimistic. Phew. Searching the entire storehouse. How much time would that take? I didn't want to imagine it, but I had to do it, or I couldn't go home. I'd do it systematically. Start in the corner and go in order. Without knowing what it looked like, I'd start in the corner and go from there, not even letting water pass. And despite all that, I had no proof it was even in here. I felt like it would be easier to just fight Takano and the mountain dogs again. Nighttime. Day goes by, day by day. I don't think it's going to get any weaker. I can hear your voice about as loudly as I could before, which means, like always, it'll only get to you weakly. I guess there was no need for us to chat. No, I think chatting is exactly what you need to do right now, Rika. Maybe. Thanks. I'll talk now. I'm pretty sure I searched the storehouse as well as I could, but I have nothing. I searched for about a week, but I don't even know what the thing I'm searching for looks like. And even if I did find it, I might have put it down again without realizing. Oh well. Honestly, this is really hard. If only I knew what it looked like, or had some proof it was in the storehouse. Being locked in here for so long is going to make me go crazy. I understand. I know it's a very difficult search. I'm doing my best too, to see if I can at least find out what the fragment looks like. And? Did you find anything out? Rika, in your world, fragments are interpreted as feelings. When those feelings reside in something, they become fragments. I understand the logic, but that doesn't give me much of a hint. Oh. And as for how to return the fragment to this world, I think that it needs to lose its form in that world. What does that mean? Do I have to break it? Yes, and completely. If it's lost from the human world, you can send it to the world of the gods. Do you know about the law of conservation of matter? It's impossible to destroy something completely. Well, that's why I'm saying you only need to destroy its form. Understand, Rika? Even in ancient times, people used methods like this to send things to the gods. I see. Alright. A way ancients sent tributes to the gods. A way to get rid of something from the human world. You're telling me to burn it. Burn it into ash and send it into the sky. That's right. By burning something to ashes, it loses its form, loses its meaning, and vanishes from the human world. I see. So I need to burn whatever is housing the fragment. I pray that it's easy to set on fire. If it was a boulder, I'd have to throw it into a blast furnace or something. Actually, Rika, the fragment might not only be in an object. It's possible it could be in a person, too. I see, because the fragments are feelings. They might not only reside in objects, so it might be Rika herself. But Hanyu, if it was a person, what would I do? You're not telling me to burn them to ash, I'm sure. The meaning of a human disappears the moment they lose their life. That would make sense. Corpses aren't people anymore. So if the fragment is residing in a person... Hello? I'd believed until now I'd been searching for an object, but maybe it doesn't even have to be that. I'd have no problem burning an object. But if it wasn't an object, but a person... I don't like this. This world. For some reason, only the bad ideas turn out to be true. I can only pray it doesn't turn out like that. If only bad ideas turn out to be true, then I could take advantage of that and search there first. If it was a person, they'd be closely connected to Oyasho-sama, right? Yes, most likely. Is it possible it's me? No, it isn't. If you were the fragment rejecting me, you wouldn't be able to talk to me right now. Which means... Next is my father, head priest of the Furude shrine, and my mother, carrier of the Furude lineage. If it was one of them, I'd just have to kill them, right? Oh, oh, oh. My human morality refused the idea of killing my parents, but that was nothing a world-crossing witch needed to think about. For someone with a true world somewhere else, this was a false world, meaning it was the same as a dream. Murdering someone in a dream was no different from doing it in a delusion or daydream. There was nothing to consider about committing the sin in this world. Hanyu was making sad ow ow noises, so I told her how I felt. Stop being such a hypocrite. Would you rather give up on returning to our original world? Ah, ow ow ow. You're a coward. You're going to force me to dirty my hands, while never dirtying yours. Convenient, isn't it? If you can blame it all on one person, nobody else will be marked with sin. I'm the perfect human sacrifice. As you're about to sacrifice your mother or so on, with no issues whatsoever calling yourself a witch. I felt those words but a little harsh on Hanyu. For a short while, she remained silent, not saying anything. But her breathing made it sound like she wanted to say something, but was hesitating. I want to go back to the final world. Rena said this once. I wonder how much we're allowed to struggle in order to be happy. I didn't think there was a limit to that effort. But Keiichi changed that. There's no limit to effort. But you have to talk a lot to a lot of people to get their advice on whether your efforts are misplaced or not. That's why I was talking about it with Hanyu, the only one who shared my current situation, and not with Mion or Rena, who would at least listen to her. And Hanyu said that if the object possessing the fragment was a person, I had to kill them. I would want to avoid that, of course, if there were any other way. But if she said that was the only way, then I wouldn't hesitate. That was all. I want to go back too. Yeah, me too. I'll be praying that the fragment isn't held by a person. Please do. I will too. And I apologize. I was too hard on you. All you can do is look for clues and keep my spirits up so I don't get discouraged. I didn't understand how annoying it must be not to be able to look for the key yourself. It isn't as hard as it is for you, Rika. The only thing I could do is at least be here to care for you so that your heart doesn't tire out. Thanks. These idle chats with you are the most enjoyable thing about this world. It's like I wake up from the nightmare for a few minutes. Oh, I see. I sort of understood why she said chatting could be important. Alright, I need to go feed the cat and get myself another water. Hanyu was the only one I could talk to from my original world. If I lose contact with Hanyu, maybe my very connection to that world would weaken, and my memories would blur. Hmm. Hmm. And that would simply give birth to a miserable, broken-hearted girl, living in delusion that this world wasn't the one she belonged in. Leave it to me. I swear we'll go back there together. You keep looking around for any clues you can find. If there are any developments on my end, I'll contact you again. I understand. Rika, hold it together. Go for it. Yay. Remember? Yay. I couldn't hear Hanyu anymore. The crystal ball's light had grown weaker than ever. But as long as it had its otherworldly glow, then I could keep believing this wasn't the world I was supposed to live in. Before, I might have shed a tear or two by now, but all the tears I could cry had dried up. I gripped the crystal ball tightly, savoring the cheer Hanyu had given me. Do your best. Go for it. Yay. I moved over to a spot with a pile of old documents. If it could interfere with Hanyu, it had to be related to the legends of Oyashiro-sama. So maybe, I thought, a clue would be written in one of the documents in that pile. Maybe, even if the thing I searched for wasn't in here, I could find a clue to it instead. Yeah, maybe you'll find out about that sword. I took a few documents from the pile and packed them into the knapsack I brought with me. Smart. I could read some, but couldn't understand any of the others. If something important was in one of the indecipherable ones, I would have no way of knowing. But I shouldn't think about that right now. I pulled out the few documents I could read, and decided to read them in secret at school and in bed. As I went in and out of the storehouse, the chances of my parents finding out increased. In that sense, this would lower that risk, which made it a little easier for me. Maybe parents did understand their children best, and would be the first ones to help them. But that was when they were normal, and not a witch like me. If their daughter started babbling about not being from this world, they'd probably tie her down and summon a noisy ambulance. If I were a little more cunning, I could flatter my parents and put the work in to make this world a little more bearable. But the more I thought about this world not being the one I lived in, the more apathetic I felt towards interacting with those who were here. That was probably why it seemed like I was being more and more isolated in class. Of course, maybe you could say that was my own fault. Definitely. That was the kind of world this was at the moment I arrived. I won't dare let anyone say that this is my fault. Of course, not a single person could tell the difference between Rika Furude and me, anyway. Who is me? The me that isn't Rika Furude. Who is she? I came around to a quiet electronic leap. I looked at my watch and noticed it was already evening. Being in here made me lose track of time. The other day I was out way past curfew, and was scolded for a long time. The alarm on my watch was to prevent that. Letting my relationship with my parents grow any worse would make everything else more troublesome. I should call it quits for today. With practiced motions, I climbed the bundle of chains and headed through the exit in the roof. When I returned to the main house, surrounded by the cries of the Higurashi that I had grown completely tired of, there was a tightly packed case of beer near the front door, and 3 bottles of wine. Oh god, is she gonna steal a bottle of wine? The beer case was probably for a drinking party at the Shrine's Assembly Hall or something. My father didn't drink beer because he liked it, so I knew it had to be for the Assembly Hall. They delivered it here before the party so he could chill it beforehand in the Assembly Hall refrigerator. And the wine probably belonged to my father. My father enjoys Western spirits, and wine most of all. And wine, at the same time, was something I enjoyed as well. Before, after my parents had died in 1981, I had gotten wine by bringing it from the main house, but my parents were alive in this world, so I couldn't do that. I stared at the bottles longingly as I tried to open the door, receiving the clack of its lock in response. I took a key from my pocket, unlocked the door, went in, and saw a note addressed to me right upon entering. It was from my mother. The note said an accident had suddenly occurred at the Kimiyoshi house, and they'd gone out to help with a memorial service. They'd be late coming back, and so on and so forth. Written as a postscript was a notice that the brewer would be bringing alcohol, and to take it inside the front door once I got back for them. I see. That must have been referring to all this. If the person had come while I was here, I could have told them to put it inside, but I couldn't bear to see them outside like this, put here before I got back. And it would be a pain if my mother started rambling about me being inconsiderate later. I made a sour face, not caring who saw, and pulled the case of beer through the front door. Next, I stood before the wine bottles and solidified my thoughts. Time to steal some wine. Couldn't there have been a slip-off with the order? It was a brewery in a small village. If my father called to say he'd ordered one more bottle, they'd probably bring over another one without a second thought. So what would it matter if one of these disappeared? I always dilute it before drinking, so I'd be able to enjoy one bottle of wine for a pretty long time. Despite being in the entrance, I belatedly looked around, grabbed a bottle, ran into my room, then pushed it into the winter futon in my closet that I wouldn't use for a while. Actually, my parents live here too, so I won't have many chances to drink. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed a glass, ice, a corkscrew, and a carton of orange juice, then ran back into my room. I put the corkscrew on the wine bottle and was overwhelmed by the urge to wet my tongue with the nostalgic flavor as soon as I could. How was I supposed to survive in this world without enjoying a good wine? I poured some into the glass, and just listening to the orange juice splashing in to fill it up made my mouth water like a dog. If I dilute it this much, it'll just look just like orange juice from the outside. But it was the nostalgic flavor that belonged to my world. At one time, this had been the flavor of my tears of defeat, shed for the unbreakable June of 1983. But now, even those tears of defeat felt sweet and tender. Those dead-end worlds were very painful, but I was still surrounded by my kind friends. I had the leeway to choose to surrender to Takano and continue lazily living in that infinite loop. Did you? I thought you only had one world left. But even that warmth was absent in this world. This made a week now, since I came here. With no prospects of returning to my previous world, I had resolved myself to staying here for a long time. But a week in, it had already driven me to drink. It'll be fine. Those worlds had driven me to the same state. And I still managed, lazily doing my best as I soaked in wine, right? I needed to be released from this Rika Furude quickly. Nobody in this world would understand that, even if I explained it. That meant I had no allies here. If I told someone, they'd think I'd gone crazy. But concerning this world's Rika Furude, that was only natural. This world's Rika Furude was a dour girl without a single friend. And one day, she'd been hit by a ball in the schoolyard, and started saying she didn't belong in this world. If that big doctor, Yamamoto, heard about this, he'd probably make a huge fuss about the impact having caused brain damage. But that would make the most sense to the people who live here. At the very least, until I arrived, Rika Furude was Rika Furude, the correct being for this world. Maybe it was more appropriate to say that one day, I, someone different from this world's Rika, appeared, then took over Rika's body. Right? Am I not Rika Furude? Well, no. This world's Rika Furude was this world's Rika Furude, a different being than me. I'd simply been interpreting her as being the same as me, even when I was in different worlds, until now. When I thought about that, leaving aside whether I'd been living happily, I felt like I'd done something bad to this world's Rika Furude. Of course, it was too late to apologize now. I couldn't give this body back to her anymore. If there was a way to apologize, it would be to acknowledge this world's Rika Furude as a being of her own. Because if I called myself Rika Furude, the girl who already existed would vanish from this life. But what about the Rikufude you replaced in the final world? She was living her life until you came back 2 weeks before Watanagashi. So that means you killed her entirely, and you're trying to take her back. Which meant the only way to apologize was to not call myself Rikufude. Well, that had been bothering me for a long time. I've long felt that my young self, pampered as the reincarnation of Oyashiro-sama, and my old self, who had awakened and traveled countless worlds, had different personalities. But if I thought of them as not personalities, but as different beings entirely, right now, I was no longer Rikufude. I. Who am I stared vacantly at the wine bottle. Did I like this brand? My father always loved to drink this wine. As a result, I borrowed it in countless worlds, and I love to drink it even now. Right now, I couldn't even be lazy without borrowing the power of alcohol, and this wine comforted me, just a little. At this point, I couldn't go on living without this wine. So in other words, I wasn't alive, but the wine was, which meant I wasn't Rikufude, and I was the wine. I stared at the western letters of the brand name written on the wine label, which I didn't know how to pronounce, and thought to myself that was the name of me. My name is Rikufude. No, not that, but this. Burn Castle! Oh my god. I don't know what that means. Maybe I'll ask my father. Frederica Burncastle. Ah, whatever. What a silly name that is. My thoughts began to slur and muddle. Cheers to the shithole of a world. Oh my god, so that's where the name Frederica Burncastle came from. And that confirms my... Like, if you watched Umineko, you saw Frederica Burncastle. And I always thought, well, this is obviously Rika. And the other one is obviously... At first I thought it was Satoko, but then I rewatched Higurashi. I'm like, no, this is Takano, because the unbreakable fate and the never giving up redos. Basically the spear and shield. Thank you for making my food all the time. Nipa. What's this all of a sudden? Mother's Day was a long time ago. As I thanked my mother and patted her shoulders, I brushed her head. It was all a show, of course. If she had the same power inside her as Hanyu, then by touching her like this, I'd be able to sense it, even if it was feeble. If I did feel that power from my mother, could I kill her on the spot? I wouldn't hesitate to kill, but I couldn't say wouldn't hesitate right here and now. Because I would rather she not have that power inside her. And at the same time, I was uneasy about what to do next if she didn't. My mother laughed like it tickled, but contrary to what she thought, I was carefully checking if I needed to kill her. Thank you, you've made your point, so please get off. It tickles. My mother told me that was enough, smiling in a way that was not as dissatisfied as her words implied. Even after being so scrupulous about touching her, I couldn't feel any trace of the power. My mother wasn't the one who held the fragment, and I had already felt my father's head. It wasn't him either. Well, if it's Satsuko, the hatred of Rika. If it wasn't either of the two people closest to the legend of Oyashiro-sama, then it was improbable that the fragment was in a person. It was a happy thing, not having to kill anyone, but that meant one of my clues was now meaningless. That said, even though the possibility was unlikely, I'd still have to touch the heads of the other people in the village every chance I got, just to make sure. And at the same time, I had to continue my deciphering of the pile of documents in the ritual implement storehouse. Whichever I was supposed to choose, the labor of reading through that entire mountain, or the sin of killing someone, I was going to need much more than a little time. I had lost track of how many mornings it had been since I drifted to this world, and this morning was frustratingly the same as the last world, the one I knew. They said next Sunday was the Watanagashi festival. This was the first time I didn't care whatsoever about it. for Hinamizawa, facing total eviction by next year. This would be their very last festival. They were apparently planning to put on a magnificent show to end things with. My normal world responsibility of performing a dedication dance as the last survivor of the Furude family didn't exist in this world either. Still, I wasn't expected to simply go off and have fun. They would have me help with things that kids could help with, like giving out boiled rice and answering the phone. I'd gotten used to going to school alone, too. When I went to school at Satoko, it was always a lively morning, with us running and falling everywhere. But that, too, was beginning to feel like a memory of the distant past. With several days already behind me, and my mind settled, I'd stopped crying about small memories like that. Everything I did was for the sake of returning to my original world. I might curse the trouble it was taking, but I would never cry again. So even when I met Satoko at the school gate and said good morning, only to be bluntly ignored like always, it didn't make me sad. The real Satoko was an incomparable friend of mine. Even if a fake Satoko ignored me, it wouldn't hurt me inside anymore. Mion wasn't outright cold like Satoko was, but she didn't seem to think of me as any more than one of her many classmates. Reina seemed like she was actually trying to talk to me, but that was because I was isolated. She was acting out of a kind of pity, and it seemed sadder to accept that. So I'd started reacting nastily to Reina's unwanted attention. After just a few exchanges like that, she realized I didn't want her doing this and stopped bothering. Being all alone wasn't sad anymore. It was only natural I'd be alone as an outsider in this false world. In fact, the less annoying acquaintances I needed, the easier it was for me. That's right, easier. When I started feeling that way, then, even if nobody talked to me during lunch, nobody invited me to eat with them, and nobody asked me to play after school, I was totally okay with it. With so few students in the classroom, if I took out a book not related to the class, Chie would confiscate it right away. I probably wouldn't be able to read the old documents while she was teaching. So all I could do was wrap them in covers I made from flipping over leaflets and folding them, and spend my free time at school pretending I was reading a regular book. We weren't allowed to bring comics to school, but the unspoken agreement was that you could read novels as long as you didn't do it during class. If I could just ignore the hustle and bustle, lunch break was the time I could focus the most. Somewhere in those countless worlds, there was a time when I got bored with my daily life and read a lot of old documents. Thanks to that, I knew the gist of their contents. I just hoped there was a clue somewhere in them about the fragment rejecting Hanyu from this world. It had been raining since midday. All of my classmates had stayed in the classroom for break, venting their pent-up energy indoors. Thanks to that, it was a bothersome, loud, and uncomfortable day for me. What's with that gloomy look? What are you reading? At the same time as those words, my old document was taken from me, and there was Satoko's face, smiling evilly. What the heck? I can't read this. Satoko looked at the old document she'd stolen from me with disgust. Well, someone as ignorant as Satoko had no way to understand it. I'd learned how to read classical Japanese from my father. Even I had to go over each line several times to figure it out. Of course, for Satoko, it wasn't about what it said. She seemed more amused at how unsanitary it looked, with dirty letters written on the dirty paper. But even if it was nothing more than a filthy book to her, to me it was something that could hold a clue. When I tried to snatch it back, she threw it to another friend, as though she had seen the attempt coming miles away. What is this? Eeh, it's gross! The girl who caught it threw it to another kid. And that kid, after his face scrunched up at the filth being given to him, grinned like an idiot and threw it to someone else. Over here, pass it! Over here! Mion-san, pass! Several of my classmates threw it amongst themselves whenever I chased after it, teasing me. At some point, Mion had joined their circle, and it had turned into classroom-wide bullying. Today wasn't the first time this had happened. Actually, maybe before I came here, it was always like this. Even in a classroom with just 10 people, and order existed, and so did cliques. Belonging to none, and not wanting to, I was the weakling in the room, and thus clearly the one it was okay to torment. Reina was the only one who said they should stop, but nobody listened to her. My classmates wanted to fool around, and they probably wanted to tell her that I was the only toy in the room, so why shouldn't they play with her during lunch break? But in the last few days, it had left heartwarming territory and moved into aggravating territory. This Satsuko clearly treated me with spite. When I thought about it now, the accident with the ball in the schoolyard that brought me into this world. She had obviously been aiming for Rika, who had just been standing there in the yard. Was Satsuko always this oblivious to the pain of others? She had understood people's pain best, because even though she said mean things, she'd been through the worst of anyone. I see. In this world, Satsuko's parents were alive, and the villagers didn't torment her. In other words, she hadn't been through the worst of anyone. Personality isn't wholly determined from birth. It's also something cultivated over many events and experiences. With all her lucky dice rolls, this was how Satsuko's personality had turned out in this world. In other words, this Satsuko was only the same on the outside, but a completely different person from my best friend on the inside. Once I understood that, the sadness of Satsuko tormenting me disappeared. And in its place, she began to look like a horrible brat just getting in the way of my haste to return to my original world. Don't bother me. I don't care what any of you do in this lunatic world, but I'm desperately working to return to my original one, so stay out of my way. Come on, Furude-san. Over here, over here! The old document made its way back to Satsuko again. This time, Satsuko started teasing me, waving around and saying to come get it. She held her nose and made a sour face, like she was holding up something filthy, earning laughs and jeers from the rest of class. I went straight for Satsuko, and of course, she threw it to the next one in line. She must have thought it would make me go over there next. But I didn't care about where the document was. Instead, I charged straight at Satsuko. I tucked my nails into the bases of my fingers and clenched my fist. I decided this was the fastest method to explain how important this was, make her understand, and prevent any reprisals, all in a very short period of time. I swung my right fist at Satsuko's face. The tip of my fist plowed into her face below her left eye, leaving an imprint that wouldn't soon disappear. I promptly grabbed a clump of her hair and pushed her to the floor, then took a nearby chair and raised it over my head, before smashing it into her a few times. Satsuko didn't know what had just happened. Confused by the sudden violence, she just curled up like a turtle. It looked a little crazy hitting her with a chair like this, but it wouldn't hurt her very badly. I raised the chair, then slammed it down over top of Satsuko's upper body, exactly as if to hold her to the ground. I lifted my foot above the chair and stomped on it like I was hammering in a nail. Satsuko, you're being a little annoying. I was tolerating you since you look like a friend of mine. But that shrill voice of yours is really starting to get on my nerves. If you come within 1 meter of me, I'll punch you right away. No excuses. Hope that's alright. Are you listening? I stomped on the chair again, and finally saw an expression of fear arrive on Satsuko's face. I knew this was the best answer. When given the chance, I had to give it to her straight. But it made me mad. I was the last one in this world who wanted to see Satsuko looking like that. I was the one who was forcing her to make that expression. It made me sick. But it was fine in the end. This Satsuko wasn't the one I knew, after all. And one day, I'd leave this world for sure. Even if I killed her on the spot, it wouldn't have anything to do with the Satsuko of my world. That's why it didn't hurt inside at all, seeing her look at me so terrified. Come on, give Rika-chan her book back. Here, Rika-chan. Rena plucked the document from a bewildered classmate and returned it to me. So forgive Satsuko-chan, okay? You went a little too far. Then stealing my important book and cutting into my precious reading time wasn't going too far. That isn't what I meant. You don't have anything to do with this, so step aside. I just wanted to get this back. I kicked the chair over, indicating to Satsuko that she'd been released. But even then, the action made her so scared that she was frozen in place. I didn't waste time going back to my own seat. Then, Satsuko began to bawl shamelessly, and Sachi ran over, making a big, overprotective fuss about the nurse's office and whatnot. The noise quickly reached the faculty room, and Chie and the principal soon burst in. Are you alright, Satsuko-san? This might leave a bruise. Sachi-kun, please take her to the nurse's office and have her rest. I'll call Yamamoto-sensei. While Chie was talking, the principal must have asked Mion what happened in the classroom. Mion spoke to him in hushed tones, glancing my way, leaving out that we were all bullying her. She was probably saying she had no part in this. Nasty Mion might say that. She didn't betray my expectation. The principal came over to me and told me to come with him to the principal's office. This usually happens when a bully child happens to bully back. A side effect of the bullying, perhaps. I was seriously fed up with everything, but my goal had only been to scare Satsuko off from bothering me ever again. Now that I had done that, I decided I needed to calm the situation down. After being brought to the principal's office, he kept asking me why I punched Satsuko, and lectured me that violence was never the answer. But regarding her taking my book and tormenting me, he admitted she was at fault. I felt a little relieved. This is a fairly difficult book. Is it from your house, Furude-kun? Yes, something like that. I don't dislike classical Japanese, but this one seems fairly difficult. Can you read this? If I couldn't, I wouldn't have been reading it. You do have a point. Would you mind telling me a little about what's written in here? His behavior wasn't one out of interest in the book, so much as an act dripping with pity, like he wanted to ease the mind of someone alienated and bullied in class a little. Accepting that would do nothing but further amplify my current unhappiness. I don't want friends anyway. I don't want you to be my friend either, Sensei. May I leave now? I want to continue reading as soon as possible. Furude-kun, it's good to read books, but don't you think you should play with your friends once in a while? My friends are somewhere else, far away. They're not here, so I don't care. Does that hand hurt at all? Huh? Oh. I didn't realize it until the principal pointed it out. I must have scraped the skin on my hand when I punched Satsuko as hard as I could. A little bit of blood was seeping from my right fist. Yamamoto-sensei is in the nurse's office, so go see him and get that bandaged up. I will. Furude-kun, school isn't only for studying. It's also for making friends. I'd like you to take that to... Excuse me. I gave him a quick curtsy. This world's principal wasn't the principal who was allowed to lecture me, so I didn't have any desire to listen. On the way to the nurse's office, I passed the classroom. I met eyes with several of the students inside, but they immediately looked away. Maybe this will work out. I'm more comfortable with them being scared than teasing me. When I went to the nurse's office, the doctor was just putting a big piece of absorbent cotton under Satsuko's eye. Chie, who was with her, looked at me, then walked over with a scary look on her face. Okay, you two. Satsuko-san, apologize for taking her book, and Furude-san, apologize for punching her. Satsuko, who had been scared and weak in the face of the sudden violence earlier, must have calmed down, since she now looked dejected. She looked like it didn't make sense to her, how she was only teasing me a little, then I suddenly went crazy for no reason and hit her. If she was like that, there was no way she would apologize first. Of course, I had no duty to apologize either, so I wouldn't apologize first. Come on, both of you. You're going to stay here until you apologize to one another. Chie yelled at us. Clearly making a sour face, I held my bleeding fist out to Yamamoto. Oh, you're bleeding. Take a seat. I'll disinfect it. Both of you. Are you not listening to your teacher? Apologize. I sensed that if we kept making Chie mad, she might tell us to stay after school. What did she think this was? Like hell I'd let some school I don't care about do their little lecturing nonsense at me. Every second of every minute is precious. I can't waste a single one. Once I understood that, I was the first to act. As Yamamoto disinfected the wound, I smoothly gave her my apology. Hojo-san, I'm sorry for punching you and stuff. Even I was appalled at how insincere my apology was. Chie probably felt the same way, but she at least appreciated the words. See, Furude-san apologized. Satsuko-san, you apologize too. I'm very sorry for taking your book and playing a joke on you. Satsuko's own apology was no less disingenuous than mine. I glared straight into Satsuko's eyes, warning her to never bother me again. But Satsuko was in her rebellious phase. It would take a lot more than that to make her wince. She returned my glare in kind, as if to say she'd get me back next time. Chie sighed, unable to do much about our insincere apologies. And then the bell signaling the end of lunch break rang. It's funny when you think about it. This world, well, Rika now is basically breaking all of her rules. She doesn't need any friends. She went into violence right away, and so on. Setsuko-san, let's go back to the classroom. Furude-san, you come back as soon as you're patched up. Chie followed Satsuko and left the nurse's office. I didn't give them so much as a glance and just held my hand out to Yamamoto. The stinging pain of the disinfectant was somehow weak. The hand receiving treatment didn't even feel like my hand. I suppose it wouldn't. It's Rika Furude's hand, not mine. Everyone must feel lonely that school is ending next year. Aren't you? No, not really. After living here your whole life, your homeland will sink into a lake. That has to be sad. I understand how you all feel. That must have been Yamamoto's interpretation of the strained atmosphere in the classroom. If he was convinced of that, then maybe it was fine. It didn't matter to me. Even you had a lot of friends until not too long ago. But everyone you got along with happened to transfer schools at the same time. They transferred. I'm no stranger to how sad it feels to be suddenly left all alone. Friends I got along with? Tomita-kun and Okamura-kun and the rest, of course. You always spent time with the boys since you got along with them, didn't you? I think they were pretty partial to you as the only girl in their group, though. That's why Satsuko hates her. I see. Even Rika Furude had friends for a while in this world, and thanks to a stroke of bad luck, they all transferred out together and left her behind. But they're not your only friends out there, right? I understand how lonely you feel, and you may only know them until next year, but I think it would be good for you to make friends with the other kids in your class and enjoy your time with them. I don't want to get close to them. My real friends, as you said, they went far away. Very, very far away. All I want is to go there. When did you start talking so much like a grown-up, Riku-chan? I guess I just feel like it. Ever since you got knocked out by the ball the other day, I feel like your expressions have grown darker. I'm worried about you. I didn't know how close this Yamamoto man was to Rika Furude, nor how much of her he knew. But judging from his words, he seemed to be the kind of adult who understood children's feelings, just like Irie in the previous world. When that ball hit her, I think Rika Furude died. If that was all it took to die, nobody could play dodgeball. If you died back then, wouldn't that make you a corpse? Yamamoto laughed a little, but not completely to tease me. It was just to urge me further along. Ah, so Yamamoto wasn't just the doctor at the nurse's office, but a mental counselor for students at a susceptible age. It looked like he wasn't Irie's replacement for nothing. For some reason, I felt like opening up a little to him. Maybe it was because he didn't exist in the world I knew. Right now, everyone who was in the world I knew, no matter who it was, made me uncomfortable. That was why I felt like opening up specifically to someone who wasn't in that world. After all, Yamamoto probably thought I was just a girl hitting puberty. Whatever nonsense I spouted, he would nod and agree. I'm not the Rika Furude you and the others know. What does that mean? Who are you then? For now, I've decided to take the name Berncastle. If I called myself Rika Furude, it would be rude to the person who originally had this body. Bern? A German name? It's almost like you're a space alien. Where did you come from? From a different world. If I had to compare it, it's like a world of what-ifs. It's still Hinamizawa, but its history and composition are completely different. In this world, they moved forward with the dam project, and the villagers decided to leave. But in my world, it's different. The villagers stood up together to defeat the project, and then the government froze it indefinitely. That's the kind of world I came from. Then the Hinamizu you came from won't end up underwater. That's right. Even after 1983, we would keep living there peacefully, so long as I lived. Sounds like a nice Hinamizu. I've taken a liking to this area as well, so the eviction is really painful for me. I suppose I'm jealous of the Hinamizu in the world you say you came from. Could you tell me more about the one in that world? The first step in counseling was to agree to whatever absurd story the patient came out with. If I didn't know that piece of trivia, I might have teared up at Yamamoto telling me to continue. But I couldn't resist the temptation to keep going. He encouraged me, and I kept talking. In that world, there was a big protest movement we called the Dam Conflict, and it took years for them to withdraw the proposal. And through that conflict, the villagers came together. Everyone got along. All the students were friends, and we even had transfer students come in from outside the village. And we made a club where we would play games, with Mion as the president. And while Satsuko was very unfortunate, she was good friends with me. And then... Poor Satsuko-chan. Why did the village have to bully her like that? If everyone was happy, they shouldn't have been mean to her. They should have let her into their happy little circle. They don't say those things to be mean. That's just how my world is. And she might have had a more painful fate than this world, Satsuko. But that one was my best friend. One I couldn't replace or compare with anyone. So seeing the way Satsuko is in this world makes me madder than it should. You can't tolerate her being mean to you when she looks the same as your real friend? Yes. Yamamoto heaved a heavy sigh, then stared out the window with his arms folded. It looked like the rain outside had let up somewhat, but it was still drizzling. After keeping his silence for a few moments, Yamamoto spoke up. What you're saying is, this isn't your world? That's right. I need to get back to my original world, because this one isn't mine. I can see why you'd want to return to such a fun-sounding Hinamizu as soon as you could. But is there even a way to do that? There is, but it's very hard to find. I see. And what do you have to do? A fragment is lost somewhere in Hinamizu, I think. Because of that fragment, Hanyu, or I should say, Oyashiro-sama, can't come to this world and bring me back. Oyashiro-sama? You mean the deity worshipped at the Furude Shrine? It would take too long to explain, but basically, yes. I've traveled through countless worlds with her. This world just happens to be one of the ones I drifted to. So as soon as she can get here, I plan on leaving. That escalated pretty quickly. I'm sorry. I didn't expect that exact wording. I gotta check. Ni hanashi ga okiku natta ne. Oops. English. Thank you. In other words, normally you and Oyashiro-sama would come to this world together. But Oyashiro-sama, the one with the power to bring you out of this world, can't get in for some reason. Which means you've been left behind, like a boat that drifted ashore? Generally speaking, yes. The fragment blocking her is somewhere in Hinamizu. If I don't find it and burn it, I can't go back to my old world. Where might that fragment be? Somewhere. A fragment is feelings, so it has to be something with those in it. I don't know what kind of object it resides in, and there's no proof it's in an object at all. It could be inside a person. I just don't know. You said you'd burn it if it was an object, right? What would you do if it was a person? Hanyu said if it was a person, killing them would amount to the same thing. Oh god, she's sounding psychopathic now. I'm praying the fragment isn't residing in a person. Who is this Hanyu? A new character? Oh, it's another name for Oyashiro-sama. Hanyu is actually her real name. I think Oyashiro-sama was just the name the villagers gave her later on. I see. Was that written in the book you were reading? No, not exactly. Yamamoto's arms remained folded, and he groaned in thought. Another silence settled, with rain being the only audible sound. Maybe I'd gotten nervous. I knew it wouldn't solve anything to talk about it, but I did anyway. Yamamoto was probably wondering if something was wrong with my brain. I could guess that by looking at his complicated expression. Do you think you'll find the fragment? I don't know. Since it can interfere with Hanyu, I figured there would be a clue in something related to Oyashiro-sama, which is why I was reading those old documents. I was searching for a clue to search for the fragment, basically. I see. I do hope you find it. But if it was a person, what would you do? You wouldn't really kill them, would you? It's hard to answer when you put it like that, but if that was the only way to return to my old world, I might not hesitate. After all, from my world's point of view, this world is just a delusion, a daydream. Whoever dies here, they'll be alive in my world, so it doesn't matter. I see, I see. But hold on a moment. This world might just be a dream to you, but it's the real world for me. It wouldn't be good if someone was killed, no matter who it was. I understand your logic, and I want nothing more than to get out of here without having to kill someone. Let's get back on track. This Hanyu, who tells you about how to go back to your old world, how does she tell you that? Is it something like a divine message? Or does she appear in your dreams? No, nothing that vague. I talked to her. There's a crystal ball that acts as a communicator between us. Will I be able to talk to this Hanyu as well? That would be the fastest way. If you could talk to Hanyu directly, that would be enough to prove my nonsense true. But I felt uneasy. Even if I could talk to her, Yamamoto might not be able to. Those kinds of magic items come up pretty often in stories. But maybe it was worth a shot trying, and he won't take the crystal ball from me and label me insane. But maybe it was worth a shot trying. I took the crystal ball out of my pocket. That marble is the communicator? That's what it looks like, right? I thought the same thing. The crystal ball's light was extremely weak. As it got dimmer, it was also taking longer to restore lately. After talking to her several days ago, and the light weakened again, it was having a hard time recovering. This much light wasn't quite enough. It looked like it needed a little bit more time to recover. Can you see light in this marble? I wonder. Maybe it's just reflecting light? But it is very pretty. Is it from a ramen bottle? Of course not. It's a Furude Shrine treasure, called the Kaminu something, and we should be grateful for it. It's rude of me to say, but I agree that it looks like a ramen bottle marble to me too. From the Furude Shrine. So how do you use this to talk to Hanyu? I put it to my forehead. When I do, I can hear her voice. Yamamoto immediately tried. He shut his eyes and let out a low groan. It probably wouldn't work. I couldn't tell if it was because it wasn't me, or because the power was too weak. I'm sorry, but I can't hear anything. What about you? It needs to recover a certain amount of power to talk to Hanyu. Let me have it. It doesn't work for me either. You can't hear Hanyu's voice if the crystal ball doesn't have all its power. I pushed it tightly against my forehead, but all I felt was a cool sensation. I couldn't feel the power in it. I see. That's a shame. In a few days, some of the power should return. If you give me time, I'm sure I'll be able to talk to her again. If you let me try again then. I see. And once you can talk to her, would you mind letting me talk as well? Yes, of course. At this rate, you'll think I'm crazy in the head, and it will be all over. It would leave a bad taste in my mouth if I didn't clear up such a rude misunderstanding. How long does it take for the crystal ball's divine power to recover? Not much longer, I think. It might even be fine after one more night. Once its power comes back, I'll tell you. Thank you. I'll be waiting. If you do let me talk to Hanyu, how about I help you go back to your old world too? Does that sound good? Really? The simple word help made a deep impression on my mind. If someone other than Hanyu were around to understand me, it would obviously be a reassurance. And with two people, the time it would take to go through the piles of literature would be halved. I'd welcome the help of a cat at this point, so I was really glad. On the other hand, I had to think about what Yamamoto felt. For Yamamoto, right now, I was a dangerous person who said she might even commit murder over a delusion. He was only speaking to me in such an understanding way to try and keep communication going. It didn't mean he actually believed me. But if Hanyu and Yamamoto could talk, it would clear all those fears away, and then you'd have to believe in the supernatural phenomena of Hanyu and me. But the real world didn't usually work out that well. After all, even if I made Hanyu talk to him, it could end in the way it always does, with Yamamoto not hearing anything. I could convey what she was saying, but he wouldn't believe it. But that didn't mean I had the option of not trying. I wouldn't give up before doing it. I'd try everything. Wasn't that the lesson I'd learned from this 100-year journey, as I ignore all my previous friends? Promise me. If you can talk to Hanyu, you'll have to believe me. Even though all she says is LOL and doesn't really act like a god. I promise. If you let me talk to Hanyu, I'll believe your story. But if I can't talk to her, what will you do? I didn't actually think he'd reply like that, and it confused me. What do you mean, what will I do? I promise to believe your story if you win. Then why not promise me that if I win, you'll believe my story? That sounds fair, doesn't it? What's his story? What story do you want me to believe? Well, I could imagine it without having to ask. He'd probably tell me to go to a largish hospital and have my head given a proper look at. Of course, there's absolutely nothing wrong with my head, so it would come up with 0 results. When that happened, maybe they'd say I needed to take care of my mind and give me psychotropic drugs or something. I heard this from Rena once before. There's a drug that makes you incredibly lethargic, unable to do or even think about anything at all. Dangerous patients think terrible things, and sometimes actually do them. The drug stopped that from happening. If they made me take that, it would be the same as killing me. It might seem like a fair condition, but it looked to me like the scales weren't in my favor to begin with. I shouldn't have told this stuff to a man I barely knew. After all that, I began to regret my decision. Could I fool him if I said it was all a joke? Did you believe me? Nippon? If that was going to be my last resort, I could use it if my attempt to have Yamamoto and Hanyu communicate failed. I couldn't abandon the possibility that Yamamoto could be my ally without trying first. Now I'll keep a slot open tomorrow, just for you, Rika-chan. Does that sound good? He made a suggestion, taking a notebook out of his coat and going over his other appointments. I nodded and said I agreed. I think that'll be a good spot to stop for this week, because I don't feel like we're that close to the ending, if there is one, coming up soon. Can't believe there's 3 arcs in this. I don't know how long each one will be, but we'll stop here soon. I assume it's going into the after school. Oh. Unfortunate. Don't bully my sister. That's bullying you. Anyway, stopping here for today. We'll be continuing, possibly finishing Song of Horror on Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.